Hey friends, before we dive into tonight's story, did you know that nearly 80% of viewers aren't subscribed? If you're enjoying this content, hit that subscribe button. It really helps keep these long stories coming. Also, for even more police horror stories, check out my new channel. The link's in the description and pinned comment. I'd love it if you stop by and subscribe. I'd love to hear from you. What time is it where you are and which city are you listening from tonight? Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into it. I can still taste stale coffee at 11:57 p.m. as I ease the cruiser onto East Lincoln Boulevard. The pavement's oil streaks gleam under streetlights that flicker like dying breaths, and the night air, dry and thin, carries the city's lullaby, distant horns, the whine of a freight train, somebody's dog barking at an empty lot. My radio sits silent in the dash, save for the hum of the scanner tuned low. 16 years on graveyard, and I've learned that every night out here is equal parts boredom and foreboding. Too much quiet, and my mind starts echoing back things I'd rather leave buried. My partner called in sick today, said her back gave out after last week's foot chase. I told her to take a day, but on my own, every passing minute drags. I check my watch, feel the weight of time stretched thin. 12 nights since the last call that shook me. Tonight feels different, like breathing in deep before a plunge. I inch past shuttered storefronts, a closed barbecue joint with broken neon, a boarded-up gas station where a lone pump stands like a ghost. The sign overhead throbs orange, then dies. I grip the wheel, thumb brushing the textured leather where I keep my notepad and pen. The scanner crackles to life at exactly midnight. I lean forward until my breath fogs the windshield. Unit 5, be advised. Anonymous 911 call. Subject screaming for help. Location, 2400 block of Millwood Drive. My pulse nudges upward. Millwood is half a mile off. Quiet subdivision, no streetlights except one at the corner. Houses spaced wide, young trees planted like sentinels. Empty, except for the echo of someone in distress. I hit the siren for a second, just enough to clear the lane, and flick on overhead lights. Red and blue bleed into fences and hedges as I slow. In my peripheral, I spot form. A young woman standing at the sidewalk's edge, arms wrapped around herself. She looks small under the half-lit street lamp, her dark hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes darting into shadows. I cut the engine and step out, boots cracking on gravel. She bolts before I reach her, feet pounding the pavement. "Ma'am, wait," I call into the night. She halts at the corner, points trembling toward a driveway. "Please, help," she gasps. He's in my house." Her voice sounds swallowed by the dark. My hand hovers over my radio mic as I slip my other into my coat pocket, feeling for the grip of my flashlight. The porch light's off. Windows are dark, the front door ajar by a few inches, pitch black beyond. The wind rustles a stray plastic bag against the siding. I slip inside, thumb on the flashlight switch, beam cutting a path through the gloom. The hallway smells faintly of lavender air freshener and damp carpet. Each footfall echoes like a gunshot in the hollow corridor. "Police," I say, voice low and steady. "If you're here, make a noise." Silence. My beam drifts left to kitchen, counters bare, a chair overturned, no sign of forced entry. Then the bedroom door shivers, just a flicker of movement. I draw closer. The light lands on half-open closet doors. He's gone, but footprints in dust show where he knelt, then crawled to the window. They vanish into lawn. I press my back against the peeling wallpaper, heart thumping. No gloves, no mask, just the uniform I've slept in half these nights. My hand itches at my holster. but I force it down. I'm here to listen, not shoot. Another scan crackles. Unit 5, any update? The dispatcher's tone is clipped. I tell them I've got a trespass suspect who might have fled out back. They dispatch K9. I catch the woman shivering on the porch. I hand her my flashlight. "Call your husband," I say softly. "Tell him to stay in the car." She nods, stumbling to her knees. I let her cry while I watch the hedges. Nothing moves. Distant siren wails, then fades. I think I saw a figure slip between two pines. Skinny, hunched, but the shadows swallow it before I can clear focus. Back in the car, I jot notes. No weapons found, no sign of violence, victim reports, male voice inside. I taste bile and wipe my mouth on my sleeve. Odd, I whisper to myself. Why flee before I even got there? My radio lights flicker. No call for the next 10 minutes. So I cruise. I drive past a laundromat sign buzzing in neon at 12:47 a.m. I'm halfway through my write-up for the report when another call drops in. Unit 5, disturbance. An empty car running in the middle of Mallard Way. Mallard Way's a dead end near the industrial park. Large lots, concrete walls, rusted shipping containers behind a chain-link fence. I reverse course. My tires crunch over gravel. The car is a 4-door sedan, doors locked, engine idling. No one inside. The windows fogged over. I approach, hand hovering near my taser. I tap the horn, just twice. The engine roars louder, then dies. I tap again. Nothing. I pull on the driver's door, locked solid. I walk around and peer through back window. A crumpled jacket on the floor. Keys still in ignition. Phone on the passenger seat with notification light blinking. No footprints around, though. I'd expect at least one set. I call it in, check the plate. Registered to someone 3 counties over. No alerts, no amber, no missing person report. I slip back inside my cruiser and punch the window defroster button. Mist clears. I feel eyes on me, like the night itself is watching. I rub my neck. I realize I can't remember the last call I actually locked my doors on. Panic flares, then retreats. I'm a grown man with 2 decades of nighttime under my belt. I can handle an empty car, but why does my chest feel like I just ran the stairwell at the precinct? The dispatcher breaks in. Unit 5. Puppy incident on West Maple. Dog and roadway. I bite back a sigh. I flip on the overheads one more time and head for the next phantom complaint. The cruiser's headlights cut through drifting fog, paint the warehouses in broad strokes of yellow. I wonder who calls 911 for a loose mutt, yet another late-night puzzle. I tap the mic. Copy that. As I pull onto West Maple, the silence weighs heavy again. I scan the empty street for a blur of fur or frantic pause. There's nothing. Just 2-story brick builds, chain-fenced backyards, the low hum of a refrigerated truck parked behind a deli. A solitary street lamp flickers off and on, the bulb struggling for life. I kill headlights and step into the glare. My boots scuff at the pavement. I listen for barking, nothing. Then, there, just beyond the beam, a figure standing by the fence. Tall, gaunt silhouette. No leash, no collar. I fix my beam on it. A German shepherd. Ears pricked, eyes reflecting back like dying embers. I breathe and take a step forward. It doesn't move. I clear my throat. The dog tilts its head as if curious. I exhale and reach into my coat for a half-eaten granola bar. Police officer's dinner, 1 a.m. special. And break off a piece. I toss it slow. It lands 3 feet from me. The dog approaches, sniffs. I remember hearing stories of K9 units going rogue, but this is no trained cop dog, just a stray with keen instincts. I kneel, hold out my hand. Easy, I murmur. Here. The dog eats, then settles at my side. I call through the radio, "Dispatch, I got a dog at West Maple." No owners in sight. Canine's not necessary. Static crackles. "Copy that," comes the reply. The dog stays. I unlock the cruiser's back door and it hops in, shaking off dew from the grass. I close the door gently, turn around, and freeze. Behind me, in the deep shadow of the street lamp, I see another shape. A man, standing 6 feet tall, coat collar turned up. He's staring at me. He isn't holding anything, but I sense calculation in the way he tilts his head. I swallow and call softly, "Hey, did you see this pooch wandering?" The dog whines and rests its head against my leg. The man steps forward, but every step crunches like a gunshot in the stillness. He comes into the light just for a second. Gray hair, hollow cheeks, denim shirt stained at the collar. His lips move, but I catch no sound. He raises a hand, not in greeting, more like a wave, but with too much deliberation. Then he turns and slips between two houses, disappearing. I glance back at the dog, whose tongue is lolling as it pants. My hand hovers over my radio. I tell dispatch I might need an extra unit. Stranger sighted at the scene. They acknowledge. I close the cruiser door, reach for my flashlight, and step out. The dog follows. I sweep the beam across hedges, porches, the crack between a boarded window. Nothing. Just the echo of my own breathing. I look down at the dog's collar. It says nothing but an old phone number etched onto worn leather. I bend and press my palm to its head. It looks up, nuzzles my hand, and I feel that familiar twist of unease. This is no ordinary stray. The night's playing tricks, or maybe it's me. Whatever it is, the dark is listening, waiting for the next call. And I'm the one it's waiting for. I ease back onto the main drag, the cruiser's headlights tracing worn yellow lines through a haze of exhaust and mist. The dog presses against my thigh in the back seat, warm and solid against the chill that's settled into my bones. I flick on the wipers. They squeak once against the glass, a high, lonely sound that echoes through the cab. I glance at my watch. 1:23 a.m. My notes for the empty car and the stray dog are half finished, but already my mind is flicking ahead to the next call. That's how it goes. One unresolved puzzle leads into the next, and if you stop paying attention, the darkness swallows you whole. I turn onto a side street, Millwood Drive, the place where a week ago a terrified woman told me someone had knelt in her closet and then slunk away into the lawn. The memory of that night still coils in my gut, the way her voice caught on each syllable of her name, as if saying it might break the spell. I park under the lone street lamp, its light sputtering in and out, and I step onto frost-crisp pavement. The dog leaps out, pads crunching, tail high. He glances up at me, amber eyes bright, then bounds toward the hedges lining the yards. I follow, flashlight in one hand, ballpoint pen in the other, ready to jot down any sign of life. The houses here are modest, ranch style with low roofs and pale siding that glows when the light hits just right. Windows are dark, shades drawn tight. A fallen branch lies across one porch, splintered wood shining silver under my beam. I stoop to touch it. The bark is brittle, like old bones left out in the open. I stand and sweep toward the next yard. Nothing but leafless shrubs and empty driveways. The dog stops at a gate, nose buried in dead leaves. He whimpers and scratches at the latch. I crouch behind him, shining the light through wrought iron bars. At first, I see nothing, just the dark gullet of the backyard. Then I catch a glint. A small, round object nestled in straw at the base of a maple tree. I step closer, the ground soft underfoot, and identify it as a kid's toy, Plastic, bright red, the kind of thing you'd kick across a driveway without noticing. But here, in the hush of midnight, it feels out of place. I reach down, fingertips brushing cold plastic. I glance around. No footprints, no tire tracks. The toy could have rolled here after sunset. It could mean nothing. Then the scanner crackles again. Unit 5, possible break, shop at Oak and 5th. Alarm triggered. I curse under my breath. Oak and 5th is 5 blocks east, the corner where Maple Street jogs into a strip of deserted storefronts. I look at the dog, whose ears have perked at the alarm's echo. He whines, then darts off toward the curling fog that climbs from the storm drains. I scoop him up and sling him into the cruiser, locking the leash clipped to the headrest. My boots thud on the pavement as I sprint back to the driver's door, swing in, and peel out. The siren barely cuts through the night, but enough to rattle a shutter. I swerve around a parked pickup, lights flashing against graffiti-scarred brick. The shop's glass door is cracked, an amber glow leaking out from broken neon. Inside, rows of frozen treats once glimmered behind glass freezers. Now, the displays are toppled, wrappers strewn like confetti. I switch off the siren and step to the door, gun in hand though I haven't drawn it. I push the door gently. It swings inward on hinges, bent at odd angles. The air smells of sugar and spilled oil, an odd mixture, sticky and heavy. I sweep the beam across the showroom floor. No one there, just footprints. Wet, muddy prints leading from the door toward the back exit. I crouch to inspect them. Adult size, deep treads, spaced wide. They stop by a collision of display racks. The corner of a cardboard stand for ice cream cones is torn as if someone pushed through hastily. I note the print patterns, the angle of each footfall, then follow them outside. The back door is loose on its frame. I give it a nudge and it yawns open. Beyond, an alley of dumpster lids and rusted bins, the ground marred by skid marks and torn papers dancing in the wind. I call it in. Dispatch says K9 is en route for a track, ETA 6 minutes. I holster my weapon and walk down the alley, scanning the high fences. Above me, the sky is the color of bruised metal. A hawk's cry folds into the silence, distant but sharp enough to startle. I shine the light at the dumpsters. No movement. I crouch to feel for prints, the cold earth soft and damp. Leaves cling to the edges of each shoe imprint. The prints lead toward a rusty fire escape ladder bolted to brick. I shine upward. The bottom rung is bent, scraped. Whoever messed with that ladder had the strength to yank it loose. I step back, consider. Climbing up could be a trap. But if I don't, whoever broke in could slip away unseen. A gust of wind rattles the metal lids, and I shift my balance. The dog sits near the alley mouth, head tilted. He whines softly, a sound that tugs at my chest. I crouch to his level. "Stay," I tell him. His eyes lock on mine. I nod, slip my hand into my coat for the radio mic. "Dispatch, Unit 5, proceeding on foot, up fire escape. K9 may need to hold off until I clear hazard." I click off. I plant my boot on the first rung, cold metal biting through leather, then hoist myself up, one careful step at a time. At the rooftop's edge, I peek over. The alley fades into shadow, the shop's back entrance a sliver of sickly light below. I scan left and right, flat tar roof, scattered gravel, a vent pipe sputtering condensation. The drone of the freeway hums faintly in the distance, undercutting the city's breath. My flashlight cuts a swath across the horizon. I spot movement, a dark shape slipping along the roofline of the adjacent building, 2 stories over. I snap off the flashlight, let my eyes adjust to the faint glow of street lamps below. The shape pauses, then shifts again, impossible to discern in detail. I draw a shallow breath. My heart hammers so hard I think the entire rooftop shakes. I squeeze the mic. Dispatch, I need immediate backup. Suspect on rooftop adjacent to fire escape. Possible armed intrusion. My voice is steady. I don't dare show the tremor in my hand. The shape is gone. Only the distant glow of neon from the street remains. I swing my leg over the railing and drop to the gravel surface of the next roof, careful to land silently. My boots sink into loose stones. I crouch, press my cheek against the cold tar. I inch forward, feeling for the edge. I'm close enough to call out if I wanted to. But I wait, breath held, senses straining. My mind loops back to the unexplained. The name whispered behind a locked door. Footsteps that end in thin air. Now a rooftop silhouette that dissolves as soon as I focus. Behind me, the dog's leash hangs from the fire escape. Handle pressed into the vent pipe. I forgot to clip it off. My pulse skips. I twist to look at it. In the dim, the handle is gone. The leash dangles empty. The dog is nowhere on that roof. My radio crackles. Unit 5, back up en route. ETA 2 minutes. 2 minutes could be an eternity. I swing to the edge. The street below is empty, save for my cruiser's lights dancing on pavement. I concentrate on the distant glow, on the rhythm of the city breathing below me. I wait for the next sign. A low creak behind me, and then a weight shifts on the tar. Something inches toward me, a slow, deliberate approach in the darkness. I freeze, every muscle coiled. My hand goes to the flashlight, but I stop. I know what I'll see the moment the beam clicks on. I let the darkness hold its secret a moment longer, knowing this is the silence that comes before the worst kind of discovery. I take a step back from the ledge, the city lights blurred into a dull haze, and summon every ounce of calm I have left. My flashlight stays dark. This moment belongs to shadows. I press my back against the low parapet, feeling the grit of tar under my shoulder, blades, and listen for any movement. Below, the faint rumble of an 18-wheeler on the nearby interstate drifts up, a reminder that the world keeps turning even when I'm pinned to a rooftop. Heart in my throat. Then, soft, a creak of metal. My head snaps toward the old vent pipe, paint peeling in vertical stripes like a barred gate. The leash handle, my only link to the stray dog, hangs limp from the pipe, the leather frayed where I must have yanked at it in haste. I swallow, my throat tight, and crack the beam of my unused flashlight just enough to slice a thin line through the gloom. The light trembles as I lower my arm. At first, I only see the dented vent cover, twisted and rusted. Then, along the pipe's seam, a smear of something dark, wet and sticky, drips in slow, deliberate beads. My jaw clenches. Blood? Oil? I can't tell. My glove taps the pipe. The fluid smears but holds its shape. I bring the beam lower onto the gravel below, where tiny prints, barefoot, dot the tar in a strange pattern, as if someone had run in place, spinning on one foot before vanishing into darkness. My breath hitches. I think of the toy in the maple yard, the empty car, the prowling silhouette, each piece drifting loose in the night, refusing to fall into place. I reach out, flick my beam toward the adjacent rooftop again, tracing the broken fire escape rungs. No sign of him. No footprints beyond the vent pipe smear. It's as if he melted into the air, leaving only silent evidence of his passing. The scanner chimes, too loud in the confined rooftop air. Unit 5, hostage negotiation team en route. ETA 5 minutes. My hand hovers over the mic, but I don't respond. Hostage negotiation? Someone's extrapolating the worst, and with good reason. I glide the beam toward the next roof's edge. The silhouette I'd glimpsed before shouldn't be here. No accessible route except that ladder, and it's bent. Whoever it is, they know these rooftops better than any trespasser. I lean over the edge a fraction and catch the dog's frightened whine from below. He's stuck on the fire escape landing 2 flights down, eyes wide, ears pinned. I bite back a curse. If I go down, do I risk him slipping into the alley, or worse, trap us both? I glance around. No other fire escape in sight, no clear path across the rooftops. The night presses in. The fog curls around vents like drifting ghosts. A gust lifts from below, tugging at my coat. I scramble backward, scanning the roof's perimeter. In the far corner, a maintenance hatch sits flush with the tar, heavy, steel, painted midnight blue. I heft it with both hands. It shifts on rusted hinges, groaning like an old man's protest. Inside, a shaft of ladder rungs disappears into deeper darkness. I shine the beam down, just enough to make out the first 3 rungs, slick with condensation. The hatch closes behind me with a soft click of metal on metal. I'm alone in a vertical shaft. My flashlight casts jittering shadows on galvanized rungs. I secure the hatch and descend. Each rung bends slightly, threatening to give way under my weight, but holds. I inch down, the dog's whimpers echo faintly from the floor above, and the shaft smells of mold and oil. My boot slips on the 3rd rung. I catch myself with a soft grunt. Above me, the faint glow of the street lamp filters through the top grate. Below, nothing but black. I keep counting each rung, 5, 6, 7, until at 10 I feel solid wood under my boot. I step onto a landing, a narrow walkway, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. The walkway encircles a ventilation tower, its slatted vents rattling with each faint breeze. I close in, heart pounding, and find the dog's leash handle caught in a pipe clamp. I tug it free and scoop the dog into my arms. He trembles, paws cold against my uniform. I press him close and murmur, "It's okay, buddy. I've got you." I tuck him under my arm and sweep the walkway with my light. The hatch down the next shaft stands ajar, rusted hinges as loud as church bells in the quiet. Beyond it, I can see the edge of the neighboring rooftop, empty and black. A narrow beam holds a steel cable suspended between the 2 roofs, barely wide enough for a man to walk. My gut twists. The silhouette must have crossed here. My radio crackles again. Unit 5, SWAT team on scene. Secure perimeter. I hesitate, weighing my options. Stay put and wait for backup, or pursue the suspect across the cable, risking a fall in the fog below. The stray dog whimpers against my chest. I think back to the toy in the maple yard, the footprints that vanished into the woods, the way Ms. Walsh had sounded on that cold January morning. Her voice fragile, breaking on her name. I tighten my grip, set the dog down gently, and clear my throat. "Copy that." I breathe into the mic. "I'm pursuing suspect, possible direction northeast. Hold K9 and SWAT until I confirm location." The dispatcher's voice goes silent. The ladder shaft, hatch clicks shut behind me, and I step onto the narrow beam, flashlight clipped to my belt, one hand tracing the cable like a lifeline. The beam of my flashlight cuts a strip of yellow across the void. Below, the street's a blur of headlights and fog, the sheriff's SUV lights dancing like fireflies. I inch forward, wet cable pulsing beneath my boot. Halfway across, a soft footstep, deliberate, slow, echoes in the fog. I freeze. The cable shudders as if someone behind me is weighing each step carefully. The stray dog's ears perk up somewhere behind me, a low whine vibrating through the steel. I swallow, fight the urge to flick on my flashlight. Silence deepens. The man steps closer, His shadow stretched long and ragged, merging with the darkness of the next rooftop. My heart hammers, each beat a drum in my ears. If I move, he might vanish into the gloom. If I stay, the beam will disappear. I shift forward a half step, enough to feel the cable sway under my other boot. The world tilts. The beam of my flashlight jerks, catching on something. A hand, pale, thin, wrapped in a hospital bracelet. It reaches out from the shadows, fingers curling as if to grasp me. The wrist ID reads Walsh, E, 78 years. My breath catches. My mind staggers back to Miss Walsh. 6 weeks ago, faint voice on the phone. He knew my name. She died last week. Her death was called natural. I stare at the hospital tag dangling from that ghostly hand. And then the cable jolts, whip crack like a gunshot. The hand disappears. The beam snaps upward, illuminating only fog and the dark silhouette of a man shifting behind me. I spin on the cable. He's there. Gabriel Watts, or someone wearing his face. His grin is thin, professional, like he's come to check on his patients. My head spins, fear roaring like a freight train in my chest. I fumble for my flashlight, catch its switch, and flood the rooftop with harsh white light. Watts stands on the far edge, just out of reach, the cable between us vibrating with static. His eyes glint in the beam. He lifts a finger to his lips, an invitation, a taunt, and steps back into the mist. His boots imprint fresh on the gravel of the next roof. I shout, "Stop!" but the sound vanishes into the fog. I shine the light across the void, empty. The cable trembles. Miss Walsh's bracelet swings from my hand, catching the beam, the name etched into plastic mocking me. Eleanor Walsh. Sirens wail distant on the street below. SWAT lights crisscross the alleys. I stand alone on a narrow cable between two worlds. Daylight and darkness, past and present, life and death. My knees shake, but I remain upright, eyes fixed on the empty rooftop where he stood. Then the beam catches the far edge, and I see the top of a pump dispenser from that boarded gas station, half a mile north. The station where, weeks ago, an old man told me he heard someone call his name before the back door rattled. I realize I've been chasing echoes of a killer's methodical path. Hospital wards to bedside visits, patients' charts to midnight prowls. And now, his pattern has drawn me onto this thin line of steel. I don't move, I can't. The world tilts, the stray dog's whine seeps into my bones, and I know I have two choices. Step forward into the fog after him, or back away, collapsing into the night that's hunting me. My radio crackles. "Unit 5, are you copy?" But I can't respond. Watts's laughter echoes soft and distant, and I remember Miss Walsh's trembling whisper, the call that started it all. He knew my name. I tuck the bracelet into my pocket, tighten my grip on the cable, and whisper, "I know yours, too." I press my palms flat against the cable, feeling the thin vibrations thrum through my gloves. The city below pulses with sirens and flashing lights, but up here it's a different world. One breath held between two hearts, mine beating in my ears, and whatever is still moving across these rooftops. I dial my mic, Unit 5 to dispatch. I catch myself. The radio's useless up here. My voice would carry only into empty air. I close my eyes for a second, taste the copper tang of adrenaline on my tongue, and force myself to look ahead at the span of steel stretching into the mist. Each step feels like trust fall. I shift my weight, heel then toe, guiding the cable's sway. Below, the dog's whine is swallowed by distance. Somewhere down there, SWAT teams fan out, rifles slung, flashlights carving desperate arcs through the alleys. but up here I'm alone with the echo of footsteps that aren't mine, and the taste of fear is familiar, like stale coffee. Ahead, the cable meets a narrow ledge. I step off and stumble forward, boots landing on rooftop gravel. The fog wraps around me, and I wipe sweat from my brow even though the night is cold. I holster the flashlight and press my back against a brick chimney, panting. My breath plumes white. I pull the stray dog's leash handle from my pocket. He's still inside the shaft, waiting. I consider going. Back for him, but I can't risk losing the trail. Not now. I scan the rooftop's edge, a flat expanse of gravel scattered around a low HVAC unit. Beyond that, an open hatch with metal steps leading down. This rooftop connects to a building I've never worked before. A defunct car wash turned warehouse. I step toward the hatch, eyes peeled for movement. The brick wall beside me bears a painted advertisement. Pete's Auto Spa. Established. 94. The letters have peeled away in places, like a half-remembered name fading from memory. Below, behind the hatch, the ventilation shaft smells of disuse, stale and moldy. I push it open, and a groan of rust greets me. Inside, sliding down is easier than climbing, but the rungs are slick. I lower myself, rapid breath echoing off metal. At the bottom, I land lightly in a maintenance corridor, fluorescent bulbs flickering overhead like fatigued eyeballs. The stray dog emerges, tail wagging, muddy paws skidding. I crouch to greet him, find him trembling. I stroke his head, whisper, "Good boy, stay close." Ahead, the corridor splits. To the left, an exit door marked warehouse floor. To the right, a set of double doors labeled employees only. The glass in the right doors is shattered, jagged shards clinging like teeth. I check my pistol's chamber and click off safety, even though I don't expect to fire. I step toward the double doors. The warehouse aisle lies beyond, dark and cavernous. Rows of steel racks empty, shadows draped across rails where once goods would have stood. I move forward, dog at my heel. Each step stirs dust into ghostly plumes. I pass a fallen pallet, its wood splintered. An empty cardboard box lies crushed. I sweep the flashlight beam left, then right. No footprints in the dust, but a long smear catches my eye. A streak of dark fluid across the concrete, like someone had dragged something heavy. I follow it toward the rear exit. Behind the racks, the warehouse empties into a loading bay. The overhead door is half open, slivers of moonlight slicing the floor into silver bars. I approach the edge and shine the light down. A dead skid loader, front loader stained with the same dark fluid. The machine's keys are still in the ignition. I cup my hand over the scanner mic and call, "Unit 5, possible vehicular staging area, no sign of suspect, requesting drone flyover." The response crackles back. "Copy. Drone ETA 2 minutes." I shift my attention to the walls, graffiti tags that have been painted over, names scrawled then scrubbed away. One tag remains, ghosted in white paint. E. Walsh. My chest tightens. How many times have I tried to scrub this name from my mind only to have it resurface? The tag endures like a warning. You can't wash away what's been written here. The drone's hum arrives, distant but growing. I look up, see its pale spotlight sweep across the bay's roof. The beam cuts jagged patterns through the open door, then lingers on the loader. The dog growls, low, guttural. I crouch, set the animal on the ground, and sweep my light upward. A movement on the catwalk above the bay, just the silhouette of a hunched figure. No equipment, no weapon visible, only the slow tilt of a head observing me. The figure slides across the catwalk, footsteps unhurried, a slow methodical glide. I rise, hand on my holster. The drone's light follows the path, but the figure ducks behind a steel support beam, vanishing. The drone's speaker crackles. No visual on suspect. I reply, maintain perimeter. I'll clear this level. I climb a nearby ladder onto the catwalk, careful of rusted rungs. Above me, the warehouse is a cavern of echoes. Each metal footstep a proclamation. I reach the top, crouch, and follow the walkway alongside rows of vents. The catwalk ends at a door labeled Office. Its window is dusty, cracked. I press my flashlight against the glass. Interior reveals a desk overturned. Papers scattered like dry leaves. No bodies, no clues beyond more smudged prints leading toward a stairwell. I ease the door open with my shoulder. It swings soundlessly on greased hinges. Inside, the office is stark. A safety poster peeling from the wall, a mug smeared with dried coffee grounds, a phone cord dangling. I step in, sweep the beam over a filing cabinet, but the drawers are empty. I climb onto the desk and peer through a side window. Outside, crates of tires stack under a moonlit sky. I step back down and feel the floor shift, like the building itself is breathing under my weight. Then a faint whisper from behind. I spin, gun drawn, flashlight beam swinging erratically. The office is empty. My heart hammers. I swallow, voice shaking in the echoing room. Show yourself. Only the hum of fluorescent lights answers. I realize my partner's sick call seems a lifetime ago. I haven't heard a voice I trust in hours. I holster my weapon and take a deep breath. Outside, the drone's light pulses through the door window. I walk over, look down at the loader and the yard beyond. A row of shipping containers lines the perimeter fence. The soft click of the window latch behind me makes my blood run cold. I whirl, but there's nothing. Just a phone on the desk, its screen lit with an incoming call. Unknown caller. No number, just the ring cutting through the silence. I hesitate, hand hovering. Who would call me here? I consider walking away, but instinct pins me. I swipe to answer. The speaker crackles. Officer Bennett, a voice rasps. Soft, measured, too calm. I've been expecting you. The line goes dead. The call drops before I can respond. My thumb hovers over the hang-up symbol, but I freeze. My radio bursts alive. Unit 5, command says, hold position. Negotiations team on primary entry. I click off the phone and jam it into my pocket. The dog whines through the floor. I run my hand over the holster, slide it free. I step toward the office door. This time, eyes closed to any shadows. I cross my arms, lean into the frame. All right, I say, voice low. Let's talk. Silence hangs thick in the warehouse. My breathing steadies. Then, from somewhere deep within the stacks comes a single footstep, soft, deliberate, and I know I'm exactly where he wants me. The footstep echoes across the warehouse floor, a single, deliberate click that carries more weight than 10,000 shouted warnings. My hand tightens on the grip of my pistol, knuckles whitening, but I don't raise it. Instead, I stand still, shoulder pressed into the cold metal doorframe, every sense straining for more. Another footstep, the rasp of fabric against steel, even the faint buzzing of those old fluorescents overhead. My partner's shift could have been here. If she'd worked nights, she'd have called a day off like this a gift, but the dog would have curled at her feet, safe and warm. Here, the stray's heavy panting at my side reminds me that not everyone gets to walk away unscathed. Talk, I hiss into the drywall, voice low enough that only these empty racks hear me. Silence follows, thick and dense. The shadows shuffle somewhere deeper between the rows, but I can't see far. Just the beams of my flashlight bouncing off corrugated metal, the dark void of empty stalls. I take a step forward, boots crunching. The dog whines, patting close, and I force myself to breathe evenly. Each breath expands my chest, the barrel of my gun a cold comfort pressed against my palm. Every instinct says run, to the hatch, up the shaft, back across the steel cable to the rooftop, anywhere but here. But I'm trapped silently by duty and fear. Fear of leaving the dog behind. Fear of what might happen if I charge blindly in the dark. Fear of what this figure wants. He's laid a trap, and I'm in the center. I inch past the desk toward the rail of the catwalk, flashlight sliding across the metal grating. The walkway splits again, a branching path to the east side of the warehouse, where shipping containers block the exit, and to the west, where a loading ramp slopes down to the yard. The drone's searchlight sweeps across both options. I follow its arc toward the west end. The beam pauses on a solitary container door hanging open, darkness yawning inside. My footsteps drag me forward. The dog lags a fraction but stays by my heel. I holster my weapon, free my service pistol and chamber a round, my last reserve before I'd have to risk a shot in this echo chamber of steel. I keep the muzzle down, mindful of ricochet, but ready to react. I check my watch, 2:17 a.m. Nearly 2 hours since the first call. Time has folded in on itself. I can't remember if I last ate or blinked. I approach the open container. Rust flakes off the hinges with a dry rattle. I shine my light down into the black throat. The dog shudders behind me, reminding me he's here. I drop to one knee, extend the beam down the container's length. I see wooden crates stacked haphazardly, thick shadow pooling at the far end. No footprints on the metal floor, but a smear of that same dark fluid drips along the side wall, curving toward the shadow. My throat closes. I rise, beam, flicking off the crates and then back to the stain, thicker here, like someone dragged something heavy through the mud before carrying it inside. I swallow and step inside. The door bangs shut behind me and I freeze, breath catching. My hand slides to the handle, thumb on the release, but I don't open it. I don't dare. Instead, I step to the crates and place my light on a corner, spilling a cone of white. I'm surrounded by boxes labeled auto parts. No sign of life, no personal items except 2 pairs of muddy boots abandoned at the far end. One large, one small, both caked in dirt and a dried slick that glints in the beam. I crouch, gingerly place a gloved finger on one boot. The tread pattern is the same as the prints outside the smoke shop, deep treads, adult size. My heart tightens. The small boot is child size. What the hell is he doing with a kid's shoe? The dog whines softly behind me. I whirl, half expecting to see the figure step out, but the container is empty beyond the boots. A gust of stale air carries the stink of oil and something fouler, metallic, like raw flesh. I shine the beam across the crates again. This time, I catch movement. A slight shift as if one of the boxes settled deeper into the floor. I crouch, lean forward, and see a narrow gap between 2 pallets. The darkness waits low, like a pit. My pulse pounds. I grip the edge of a crate and pull. It lifts a fraction before the chain binding it groans. Beneath it, the floor is stained with fresh fluid, pooling between the crossbeams. I yank harder, metal scrapes, echoing like fingernails on chalkboard. The crate slides free, revealing a tangle of rope, a child-sized jacket, and a doll's head. Plastic, its eyes cracked. I jerk back, nearly dropping the flashlight. The dog retreats to my side, yawning. The crate's label faces me, a faded shipping sticker from Dryden Regional Medical Center Disposal Unit. I reel, blood turning cold. He's brought this here, the hospital, Miss Walsh's home. Now this container in a boarded-up warehouse. Each thread of his pattern weaves into a single tapestry of cruelty. I dial the mic. Dispatch. But the scanner's dead. No signal this deep in steel. I whisper, "Damn it." I press my back to the container side, hold the flashlight near my chest so its beam sweeps low across the floor. I need a plan beyond this. I need to find him or get out. The dog whimpers again, shifting underfoot, and I realize he's staring at the gap beneath the crates, the place the boots pointed. I step closer and listen. A faint rustle, like breath. A soft groan. I swallow, steady my hand, and inch forward. I crouch next to the gap, press my eye to the floor. The beam cuts in and I see feet, bare feet, curled under the next pallet. A hand moves, thin fingers twitching against the metal. My heart hammers and I drop to both knees. "Sir," I say, voice low. "I'm here to help if you're hurt." The groan becomes louder. A rasp of pain or terror, I can't tell. The dog snarls, back hair rising. I reach for the pallet's edge, ready to hoist it and drag out whatever's trapped. But before I touch it, the dust overhead shifts. A shape brushes across the seam of the container's ceiling, sliding toward the open end. A scuff, then a thud as something heavy lands outside. I tense, brace my shoulders. The flashlight's beam dances across the shadowed interior. The dog spins, hackles raised, gaze whipped back and forth. I reach to my belt for the radio again, nothing but static. Then, through the gloom at the open container door, I see a silhouette. Tall, lanky, moving slow. His head tilts toward me. An intentional gesture. He knows I'm here. I muster a calm I don't feel. "I've got a kid in here," I call out. My words hang in the muggy air. No response. Footsteps crunch on the concrete outside. My chest tightens as the beam drifts toward the opening. I cup my free hand around the beam, force it steady and focus on the door. The silhouette steps into view. A man in a nurse's uniform, his pockets bulging with items stolen from hospitals. Pens, clips, a torn name badge. The dog tugs at my pant leg. I catch one glance at the man's face. The same hollow cheeks, the dead eye, and the slight malicious smile. And I know it's him. Gabriel Watts. He raises a hand, winding a syringe from its plastic wrapper, the needle glinting cruel and precise under the beam. For the first time, his face seems alive with anticipation. I rise slowly, backing toward the pallets. The dog barks and nudges at my hip. I can hear the child moaning softly. Time contracts. Me with a gun aimed at a warehouse door. Him with lethal tools in hand. A kid trapped beneath steel. Sirens wail again, muffled but closer. 4 minutes at most. My finger tightens on the trigger. I whisper, "Stop, Watts." This ends now. My voice cracks, but I keep it steady. Gun lowered enough that I could fire without hitting the child. The dog whines, and the child moans louder, ragged and scared. Watts lifts the syringe, flexes his wrist. The metal plunger glints. He steps into the container a foot, his eyes cold. The tarp of steel between us crackles with tension. He smiles, but it's nearer a grimace. His free hand hovers over the gap. I lean forward. "Don't," I say. "This is over." He pauses, just for a second. Enough for me to see the clinic's name on his badge. Dryden Regional, night shift. Blood blossoms on the concrete panel beneath his foot. Fresh, bright. And then he speaks, voice soft as a lullaby. I just wanted to hear them say my name one last time. My next breath catches in my chest as the world narrows to one point. Watts, the syringe, the child's muffled cry through the metal seams. Sirens thunder outside, but they might as well be in another universe. All I have is this moment, this decision, and the cold barrel of the gun in my hand waiting. I swallow past the lump in my throat. Sights trained on the barrel of my service pistol. Watts's voice lingers in the air like a perverse caress. I just wanted to hear them say my name one last time. The child's moan crawls up from beneath the crate, ragged and small. The dog whines at my side, muzzle pressed into my thigh. I flick off the safety, my finger resting on the trigger guard, and take a deliberate breath. "Drop the syringe," I say, voice low but carrying weight. The barrel's dot hovers on his chest, just above the hospital badge. His eyes don't flicker, don't betray surprise. They glint with cold anticipation. For a heartbeat, I think maybe he'll drop it. Maybe he's tired of this, tired of the game. But he lifts the syringe higher, the needle poised like a viper ready to strike. I step forward, boots thudding on metal floor grating, and my voice steadies. "You're done. You failed." The words taste bitter. Sirens have grown louder. Less than 2 minutes away, I can almost feel their pulse vibrating through the warehouse walls. Watts's hand trembles only slightly. The child quiets, perhaps sensing the shift, or feeling the life draining from his own body. "Failure," Watts whispers, shaking his head. "I was perfect." His tone is manic, distant. He presses the tip of the needle against the child's bloated fingers. I inhale, holder pressed tight, and I know I can't wait for SWAT. The dog whines louder, stepping forward, its instinct to protect the innocent flickering brighter than my own hesitation. I lower the pistol barrel an inch, aim at Watts's knee. "Step back, now!" My voice cracks under the weight of urgency. The metal echoes. He freezes, blade of the syringe wavering. Blood on his glove, fresh, trails from the syringe hub. I see the gash on his left palm, the same hand that wrote patient notes in careful cursive. Eleanor Walsh, secure. Follow-up visit? Yes. Step back, I repeat. The barrel touches the fabric of his scrubs. He holds the syringe inches from the child's face. I draw in a slow breath, willing the world to freeze. My mind flashes to my family, my daughter's smile, my wife's voice. If I pull this trigger, these hands will never hurt another patient, and a life might be saved. He tilts his head, smile thin as a razor's edge. Make me. His challenge drips with contempt. I fire. The shot cracks through the container like thunder. Watts's body jolts, the syringe flies, and he crumples against the metal wall. The dog barks, sharp, urgent, and the child's wail breaks free of the crate. I slam the butt of my pistol into Watts's temple as he collapses, blood spraying across the dull gray metal. The child sobs, face smeared with filth and fear, and I drop to my knees, reaching beneath the crate. The dog leans forward as I scoot the crate aside. The child's face is pale as the overhead fluorescents flicker. I tuck him into my jacket, feel his small body tremble against me. My radio rips to life. Unit 5, shots fired. SWAT on site. Are you okay? I press the child closer to my chest, answering through ragged breaths. I've got the kid, suspect down, need medics, and K9. The dog nuzzles the child's back, ears pinned, and I hold them both as I crawl toward the container door. Watts's blood puddles behind me, mixing with oil drips and the dried tracks of his twisted path. I push the door open and step into the warehouse floor, arms full. SWAT operators flood the bay, rifles raised, flashlights sweeping. A medic kneels by the child, whispering assurances. I let go, stand shakily, and watch them work. My pistol hangs at my side, empty now, but for one final round. My legs shake so hard I lean against the container's edge. The stray dog leaps out and darts toward the medics, tail wagging hesitantly before they shoo him gently aside. I stare down at Watts, his eyes glazed, mouth frozen in a half sneer. The syringe lies on the floor near his blood, a twisted trophy. I remember the nights of chasing shadows, the empty car, the toy in the maple yard, the shop break-in, the dog that led me here. Each puzzle piece cut deeper into my judgment, my suspicion, my fear. And now, in the stale warehouse light, I see the end of his path and the end of mine, because nothing after this night will ever be ordinary again. A captain strides over, badges gleaming in the flood of red and blue strobe. His face is hard, relief creasing his eyes. "You all right, Bennett?" he asks, voice steadying my world. I nod, voice lost in the echo of sirens. "I got him." He claps me on the shoulder. "Good work." But his words thrum hollow. I look down at my hands, trembling, stained, then at the dog curling protectively by the medic's feet. The warehouse grows quieter as evidence techs cordon off the crime scene. The child is bundled into an ambulance, clutching a volunteer's hand. I watch until the doors close, then tell the captain, I need to sit down. My knees give way, and he catches me before I hit the concrete. As dawn seeps into the sky, pale and tentative, I slip away to the cruiser. The dog follows, nudging my leg. I slide behind the wheel, rest my head on the steering wheel, and let the silence settle like a weight. I reach into my pocket, pull out a folded slip of paper. Ms. Walsh's note of thanks from that first call, so fragile I'd tucked it away for luck. I smooth it between my fingers and let it fall back into my coat. The city wakes around me. Honking cars, shopkeepers flipping open metal doors, joggers nearly tripping over my cruiser's lights. I start the engine, turn off the siren's echo in my head. The stray leaps into the passenger seat and settles on the console. He licks my hand once as if to say, "Are we done?" I nod, voice rough. "Yeah, buddy, we're done." But I know it's a lie. The night will always be waiting. Hungry with whispers of things that never made sense, until someone like Gabriel Watts gives them meaning. And in the glare of coming morning, I realize how fragile the line is between safety and dread, how quickly the hunter becomes the hunted. I pull onto the boulevard, the stray's head resting on my arm. My radio crackles with morning reports. "All clear. Evidence secured. One suspect in custody." I mute it, let the street's hum fill the cab. The highway stretches before me, but I don't chase it. I drive slowly, past the shuttered gas station, the dark shop windows, the empty fields of frost. Every shadow feels familiar now, every silent corner a reminder. I grip the wheel and whisper into the wind. "I know your name." I sit in the driver's seat long after the ambulance and SWAT have cleared the yard, the stray dog curled against my thigh. Dawn's first light creeps through the windshield, painting the cab in soft gray. My uniform is stiff with dried blood and sweat, and I can't remember the last time I felt truly clean. I rub my temples, trying to unravel the tangle of what happened in that container. The child's frightened eyes, Watts's manic calm, the squeeze of the trigger. Every breath feels strained, as if the air itself resents my survival. Behind me, the warehouse looms like a tomb, its broken windows and rusted metal a monument to all the nights I chased shadows. I close my eyes and think of the voices I heard. Miss Walsh on Maple Street, the woman on Millwood Drive, the gas station attendant who heard his name whispered, the young woman in the house on Millwood Drive, even the stray dog's low whine at my side. Each call was a thread, and I pulled until the fabric unraveled, revealing Watts's grotesque design. But pulling on those threads left raw wounds, and I'm not sure they'll ever heal. My radio crackles to life, but I hesitate before answering. The dispatcher's voice is familiar, professional. "Unit 5, return to precinct for debrief." Medical examiners on site for suspect and victim. I press the button. Copy, I manage, voice hollow. I switch off the mic and let silence return, broken only by the dog's soft breathing. He lifts his head, amber eyes meeting mine, and I reach over, scratching behind his ears. He sighs, tail thudding against the console. I slide the key into the ignition. The engine's rumble feels like an intrusion, but I need movement to chase away stillness that threatens to swallow me. I pull away from the warehouse, past the chain-link fence, the graffiti-scrawled walls, the rows of shipping containers. The road curves and the warehouse vanishes from view, but its shadow lingers in my mind. Every time I glance in the rearview mirror, I half expect to see the silhouette of Watts standing in the cab's reflection, syringe in hand. I drive without a destination, tires humming on asphalt stained with frost. The stray dog lifts his head, nose twitching as if catching a scent I can't perceive. We pass shuttered storefronts and empty lots, and I recall the night's earlier puzzles. The empty car on Mallard Way, the break-in at the smoke shop, the boots and child's jacket in the warehouse, the hospital bracelet swinging from the vent pipe. Each detail once seemed isolated, meaningless on its own, but together they formed a twisted map of Watts's cruelty. And now that map has guided me here, to where darkness and fear almost won. I think about the child we rescued. I wonder where he is now, whether he'll remember the horrors, or whether time will dissolve the terror until it's nothing but a bad dream. The medic said he'd be all right, that with treatment and counseling he has a chance. I hope that's true. But I also know how memories can haunt. The way a scent can bring back a nightmare, the way a flicker of light can recall the flash of a syringe. I grimace, pressing my palm against the steering wheel, knuckles white. The route curves toward the precinct, but before I turn I glance at the radio console. A single folded slip of paper lies where I left it, Ms. Walsh's thank you note. So delicate I'd tucked it in my breast, pocket for luck. I pick it up. The edges are curled, the ink smudged from blood and rain. I unfold it. Thank you for listening to me, Officer Kenny. My heart twists. Listening had been the hardest part. Hearing the fear in her voice, believing it wasn't just a prank, and caring enough to follow footprints into the night. I fold the note and slip it into my wallet. Then I look at the odometer, 143,221 miles. I've put more miles on this cruiser than any partner, any patrol buddy. It's almost time for retirement, but after tonight I don't know if I'll ever feel safe in a patrol car again. I wonder if I can ever patrol the graveyard shift without expecting my own name to be called from the dark. A wind gust rattles the windows as I slow at a red light. I catch my reflection in the side mirror, pale face, haunted eyes, uniform, stained and wrinkled. I don't recognize myself. I reach up and touch the edge of my badge, cool metal, unyielding. It reads Bennett. I trace the letters, Bennett. I whisper to my reflection, I know your name, and the words echo back in a voice I barely recognize. The light turns green, and I drive on. The stray dog licks my hand, nudges me to keep moving. In the distance, the precinct's lights shine like a beacon, or a warning. I press down on the accelerator. My grip on the wheel eases as the cruiser picks up speed. Yet, even as I head toward the morning debrief, toward paperwork and brief moments of rest, I know the night doesn't end. It only changes form. No matter where I go, shadows will follow. Every empty road, every deserted parking lot, every flickering street lamp could become another piece of his design. And in those moments of stillness, I'll hear Miss Walsh's voice, the child's moan, the stranger's whisper of my name. I'll feel the brush of a vent pipe, the cold press of metal beneath my fingertips, and I'll remember that darkness can wear any face: calm, familiar, trusted. The precinct looms ahead. I pull into the lot, wheel crunching gravel, engine idling. I kill the ignition. I sit for a long moment, too long, and breathe. The stray dog whines, prompting me to open the door. I step out, the chill air biting through my jacket. The dog bounds to my side, tail wagging uncertainly. I look back at the cruiser, then at the building where dawn's light glows pale behind barred windows. I place a hand on the dog's head and say quietly, "Who will be brave enough to answer when they call my name?" I remember the hush settling over the precinct just before I grabbed my gear. A kind of quiet that feels alive, as if someone's holding their breath. It was midnight on a Tuesday in early December, and the wind had already turned cold enough to sting the back of my neck through the uniform collar. I pulled on my Kevlar vest, checked the holster, and glanced at the wall clock. 0:02. The lobby lights had that dull, buzzing glow. I patted the radio on my belt, felt its familiar bulk, and stepped outside into the damp parking lot. My cruiser's heater hissed as I slid behind the wheel. I punched the heater dial up to defrost the windshield, and for a moment I watched the fog snake across the glass. Then I radioed dispatch. Forrester. Clear for Highway 41 southbound. The road, once I got on it, felt more like a ribbon of uncertainty than asphalt. The shoulders were narrow, gravel grinding beneath my tires any time I drifted. Trees pressed in close on both sides, writing dark silhouettes against low clouds that hid the moon. I'd patrolled these sections for years, enough to recite every mile marker, every hidden pull-off. Usually, I cruised at 25 miles per hour, eyes scanning for flickering brake lights or a stray deer. But tonight, I felt an itch at the base of my skull. Maybe it was the cold. Maybe it was the past catching up. Echoes of calls I never should have taken. At mile marker 8, I saw the glow of a gas station beacon, neon red, half burned out. I slowed and drove past. Pumps rusted, kiosk darkened, bulletin board peeling like old skin. No attendant, no cars, just that red light bleeding into the night. I thought of the last call I'd taken there, a phantom car that had ducked behind the pumps before dispatch could confirm plates. The witness was a trucker with a steady hand, but by the time we got there, nothing remained. Not a footprint, not a drop of oil. The pumps still clicked open, but nozzles were dry. Sometimes I think those pumps swallowed the headlights. A mile later, my radio crackled with a low hiss. I fingered the mic. Dispatch, copy? Static, then a soft beep like a heartbeat. I paused, waited for the next check-in. Nothing. I flicked the volume. The silence roared. I leaned forward, temperature rising under my uniform, thinking I should turn back. But something in me knew I'd miss whatever came next if I did. At mile marker 10, the highway cut through a clearing where a single stop sign stood, lights long, since torn down. Gravel drifted over the pavement's edge, and I felt compelled to stop. I killed the engine, and the night shifted. Everything felt closer, the scrape of a twig, the damp taste of air against my tongue. I stepped out, flashlight in hand. Its beam split the darkness, revealing nothing but the road's cracked center line, slicing off into blackness. I circled the cruiser, knuckles white around the handle. No one was out here, at least no one human. I heard the radio spark again, faint whisper at the fringe of hearing. I clicked the mic, voice calm. Forrester to dispatch, I'm investigating. A pulse of static swallowed my words. The silence came back in a rush, as loud as a siren's wail cutting off mid-call. I pressed the earpiece closer, my pulse thudding, I zeroed in on the noise, a rhythm too regular to be wind or wildlife, like footsteps. I trained my flashlight on the tree line. Pine needles shook against each other, though no breeze stirred. The beam caught a shape. A dark form crouched behind a sapling, head tilted as if listening. I jerked the light and swept across the undergrowth. Only shadows, no eyes reflecting back. My breath hitched. I lifted the radio again. "Dispatch, I've got..." Click. Nothing. I took a step toward the trees. My boots sank into leaf litter and I could hear the crackle of bones beneath my weight, twigs snapping like brittle bones. "Back up," I whispered to the night. "Now." My words felt hollow in the absence of a response. I flicked the torch that hung on my belt, mag light, its beam wider, brighter, and clicked it on. The forest edge glimmered. Moss, ferns, mottled bark. No footprints, no blood, no sign the shape had ever been there. I cursed softly, heart trying to outrun my chest. I circled back to the cruiser and yanked the door open. Inside, I grabbed the handheld mic and keyed the radio again. "Forrester to dispatch, send a unit to this location. The radio rasped, then a voice emerged. Not dispatch, my own, distant, hollow. "They don't wait." The phrase echoed twice more, then died in static. My hand froze on the mic. "Who is this?" I asked, voice tight. Nothing answered. I dropped the mic, chest heaving. I drew my service weapon, old habit, and clicked off the safety. Pointing down, close enough to rattle the chamber, I whispered, "Guardian down, one for me." Funny how we talk to ourselves when no one else can hear. I shut the door gently, holstered the mag light, and slid into the driver's seat. The engine turned over with a reluctant growl. I flicked on the headlights and watched the beam crawl back onto the pavement. The trees behind me stood silent, motionless. As I backed onto the highway, I thought of Keller's car, miles back, hazards still blinking, engine idling. I thought of the dispatcher noticing my cruiser abandoned an hour later and sending Martinez. I pictured her finding nothing in the seat but my flashlight gone, just like me. The thought didn't unnerve me. It stung with something more subtle, the uncanny certainty that I'd been seen, not by any human, but by whatever lingered in the shadows between markers 8 and 10. I eased forward, tires crunching on gravel, and turned on the radio. Relief flooded me when dispatch's clear voice answered. "Forrester, come in." I swallowed, knuckles whitening on the wheel. "I'm fine," I said, voice steady. I'd lied, of course. By then, I'd already stepped into a story that didn't care for endings. I drove on into the night, the highways stretching open like a wound, and I promised myself I wouldn't stop again. Not until sunrise, or until I had no choice. The road ahead felt different, less a route between points A and B, and more like a question begging for an answer I couldn't name. And all the while, behind the hum of my engine, I couldn't shake the idea that someone, or something, was walking just beyond my headlights, matching my pace, waiting for me to realize that I wasn't alone out here. I eased the cruiser onward, the beam of my headlights cutting through the dark like a surgeon's scalpel, precise but unforgiving. The road narrowed as I approached the old cotton mill, its hulking silhouette rising against the low clouds. I'd driven past it countless times, but tonight it looked different, its broken windows like dark eyes watching me. I slowed to 20 miles per hour, radio tucked close to my chest. Outside, the air was thick with the smell of damp earth and rusted metal. I parked a few hundred feet from the mill's entrance, enough distance that any sound I made would carry across the empty lot. Normally, I would have driven on. No call was pending here, but something about the mill felt alive tonight, as if it had been waiting. I reached for my flashlight and flashlight-mounted weapon light, checking the batteries with a practiced twist. The radio remained silent. I flicked it to scan mode. No chatter beyond the usual static hiss. Footsteps crunched on gravel behind me. My heart jerked. I spun, beam sweeping across the lot, landing on nothing but shipping pallets stacked near the fence. The pallets cast long, narrow shadows. I clicked off the flashlight and listened. Silence. Everything felt broad and expansive, yet thick, like walking underwater. I returned to the cruiser and grabbed my coat. The temperature had dropped, and my breath formed small clouds in the faint glow of the dash lights. I searched the rearview mirror, watching my eyes, as if my reflection might give away what I wouldn't say. Then I stepped onto the asphalt and moved toward the mill, boots grinding in gravel, each footfall timed with the faint whisper of my own breathing. The mill's front door hung slightly ajar, one hinge rusted through. Inside, darkness stretched back 10 feet before the light of my torch could reach. I clicked on the beam and entered. The air smelled stale, like machines long dead. I swept left, broken machinery, oil stains on the concrete floor, a jagged shard of glass glinting in the light. I swept right. Empty crates, tattered wires hanging like drooping vines. No recent footprints, no sign anyone had been here in years. But I could have sworn I felt a presence pressing just beyond the edge of the light. I radioed dispatch in a low whisper. Forrester to dispatch. Checking an old mill off Highway 41. No active call, but The words stalled as the beam landed on something at the far end of the room. A pair of boots. Polished, black leather, too clean among the dust. No legs above them, just the boots standing there, unmoving. My hand tightened on the flashlight. I edged forward, weapon light raised. Each step echoed in the cavernous space. I could smell leather, faintly chemical. The boots stayed rooted, as if on invisible feet. I clicked the light off and on, motionless. "Who's there?" My voice sounded small in the empty shell. The boots remained. I snapped the light back up and shot the beam past the boots. No body, nothing. A gust of wind rattled the door behind me, and I spun. The door swung wider, creaking. The boots had shifted an inch. My breath caught in my throat. I took a step back. The floor groaned beneath me. The boots surely moved, 2 inches now, closer. I raised the beam higher. The cuff of a pant leg appeared, leather folds trailing into nothing. I dumped more power into the mag light and realized the pant leg was stuffed into the boots, like a scarecrow figure hastily assembled. No torso, no arms. Yet the crotch of the pants seemed filled, as if someone sat on an unseen stool. A concrete column separated me from the scarecrow. I circled behind it, keeping low. Heart thundering, I laid the flashlight on the floor, radio in one hand, service weapon in the other. I spoke into the headset mic. "Dispatch, I have something here. Send..." Static, no response. I flicked the radio's volume switch. Only the hiss remained, then a distant voice buried beneath the static. "Stop." It came so faint I thought I imagined it. I keyed the mic. "What? Who?" The word died as the door behind me slammed shut with a bang that deafened me. My knees buckled and I hit the floor hard, the flashlight careening away, its circle of light bouncing off the walls. I slammed back to my feet, weapon light hugging the wall as I ran to the door. It was locked, padlock in place, rusted solid. I pulled at the frame. It didn't budge. I turned, scanning for another exit. A rusted stairwell led up into darkness. I climbed, expecting the wood to groan, but it held. Each step rose into blackness, my light barely revealing the next tread. At the top, a narrow corridor stretched into the mill's wing, Windows boarded up, jagged daylight where boards rotted away. I followed the hallway, boots echoing, toward a sliver of moonlight at its end. A door stood there, sealed with layers of plywood. I shone the light through the cracks. A room full of old office desks, yellowed papers, overturned chairs. Behind a desk, someone had scrawled in red marker, "They don't wait." I froze. My voice came out raw when I spoke. "Who are you?" No answer. Suddenly, cold air rushed through a broken window behind me, slamming the plywood. Papers fluttered across the floor, and a skeletal finger of breeze swept past. I backed away, panting. My flashlight flickered, then went dark. I cursed and clicked it. Dead. Battery drained. I drew my sidearm in my right hand and groped for the radio with my left. Silence. I hissed, "Dispatch, Martinez, anyone." Nothing. My heart felt like a live thing pounding beneath my ribs. I listened for more than sounds. I listened for absence. The corridor lay silent, but I heard breathing, mine ragged. Behind me, the doorway groaned. I whipped around. Plywood bowed inward, as if something pressed behind it. I took a step back, thumb on the hammer of the revolver. The breathing stopped. My ears rang. I raised the pistol, aiming at the wavering plywood. One more step. The wood cracked. I fired. The blast rocked me, smoke curling in the tight corridor. I didn't wait to see the result. I turned and ran, feet pounding down the stairs, through the mill's cavern, back to my cruiser. I fumbled for the key ring and tossed open the door. Inside, I sank onto the seat, shaking, the frame of the car pressing against my back like a cage. I started the engine. It roared to life, and I pressed the wheel hard, fishtailing slightly as I spun onto the highway. My radio crackled, Martinez's voice urgent. "Forrester, are you okay?" Relief and guilt rolled through me. Something's here," I stammered. "Something's wrong." She came on in full clarity. "I'm on my way. Stay where you are. Don't go back." I nodded before realizing I was alone. My head lolled back against the headrest, eyes closing. In the silence that followed, I heard the engine idle, and then footsteps. In the rearview mirror, I saw footprints appear on the asphalt, damp and fresh, walking toward me. I reached for the radio, hand shaking. "Martinez." My voice cut off as the footsteps stopped at the passenger door. I heard breathing there, soft, measured. Then the unmistakable sound of nails against glass. My heart slammed against my ribs as the footsteps at the passenger door paused. I pressed my palm flat against the glass, trying to find the lock switch without looking. The handle rattled, soft but insistent, like a slow knock on a coffin lid. My breath caught. I knew better than to leave that door unlocked, but my uniform shirt was soaked through the back, cold sweat trickling down my spine. I fumbled for the lock, found it, and slid it home with a click that felt deafening in the cramped cab. The footsteps stilled, and I stared into the mirror, willing myself to breathe slowly, evenly, but the quiver in my chest betrayed me. I reached for my service weapon again, clumsy with adrenaline, and held it pointed at the passenger window. The radio erupted in static, then a distant voice. Not Martinez, not dispatch, but my own. "Don't look back." The words slithered through the hiss and were gone. I yanked the radio's power switch. Nothing but silence and the engine's idle thrumming. I forced my foot onto the gas and lurched forward, tires spinning on loose gravel before catching road. The highway stretched out black ahead, mile marker 11 glowing faintly in my headlights. My reflex was to follow procedure, report my location, request backup, but every instinct screamed that any sound would draw more attention. I flicked off the headlights, driving in near darkness, trusting my night vision and the faint glow of the dashboard. The temperature inside dropped, and I curled my shoulders inward, holstering the gun to keep one hand on the wheel, the other ready to tap the siren if necessary. At mile marker 12, I flicked the headlights back on to navigate a gentle curve and nearly veered off. The beam caught something at the road's edge. A glimmer like metal, then a silhouette crouched low. I slammed the brakes, heart in my throat. The cruiser shuddered to a halt, and the figure darted behind the guardrail. I stayed put, scanning. No face, only the outline of a man's hat and coat, bending low as if peering at something on the pavement. The rain had started, fine droplets that smoked where the tires had warmed the asphalt. The windshield wipers kicked on with a stutter. I flicked them to fast. They slapped rhythmically, a sad metronome dragging out each second. I pointed the spotlight under the mirror toward the guardrail, forcing the rain into diamond sparks against the beam. Nothing, but I knew it had been there. The officer's sixth sense, trained and honed over decades, told me I wasn't imagining things. I shifted into drive and eased forward, fog forming on the edge of the windshield again. I punched the defroster, but it barely warmed the glass. My breath fogged my mask as I exhaled, and I had to wipe it away with my sleeve. Adrenaline made my hands tremble. I tapped the dash to get the needle from jittering. I reminded myself those were ordinary mechanical failures, night shift quirks, wipers that catch, heaters that hiss, but experience whispered that ordinary explanations weren't enough tonight. At mile marker 13, a weathered sign announced Florence County Line. I forced myself to radio. Florence County, this is Forrester. Report any unusual traffic or calls in my vicinity. Silence. I keyed again, static. Then a voice, soft and urgent. Why are you here? My spine tingled. I clicked off the mic. Question unanswered. Intention unknown. The rain began in earnest, pattering on the roof in a tempo that hurt my ears. I watched the bulbs on my overhead console flicker as the cruiser's electrical system drew more juice. My instincts screamed, get to someplace safe. But safe meant leaving Highway 41 alone, a breach of protocol. The thought weighed against the fear that drove my every breath now. I slowed at mile marker 14, where an old service road curved off into a field. I turned onto it, tires spitting mud, and drove until the tree line swallowed the headlights. The undergrowth scratched at the doors as I eased past. I killed the engine again. Darkness pressed in, absolute. I sat in the silence, unsettling and thick, until the rain lulled. I debated stepping out. Search for footprints, a discarded glove, a hint of what stalked me. But I stayed inside, knuckles white on the wheel. The dashboard clock ticked 1:23. 2 hours into the shift. I should have been halfway back to the station by now, but I couldn't leave until I knew what I'd seen, and what had seen me. Then, beyond the cracking of distant thunder, a faint pair of taillights appeared on the highway, weaving through the storm. A civilian car, perhaps lost. Emergency lights off. I weighed my options. Wait for it to pass and risk it stopping, or flick on the cruiser's overhead light to warn it, and risk drawing attention. My finger hovered over the switch. The lights came closer, and I realized the shape behind the wheel was impossibly still. No movement, no reflection of hands on the wheel. The car drew level, passenger window down. "Help me," a voice hissed. But it sounded half-remembered, my own voice pitched low. I nearly jumped out of my seat. The taillights vanished before I could respond. I flicked on the windshield wipers, and when the screen cleared, the road was empty. No other car but mine, idling in the field. I hit the ignition. The engine caught, then sputtered, dying on the second turnover. I slammed my fist against the steering column. Another shift in the wipers and they stilled with a final jerk. I unbuckled and stepped out into the rain, boots sinking into mud. The storm blotted out sound, but I heard a soft humming at the horizon, like an idling engine somewhere beyond the tree line. I pulled my weapon and flashlight from the lockbox, stepping back to survey the open field. The rain pelted my jacket, slicking the fabric tight across my chest. Torn bits of pasture fence creaked in the wind. Something moved at the tree line. Impossibly slow gait, silhouette swaying. I clicked the mag light on, taking aim. The beam struck nothing but waist-high grass. Then came the whisper, clear as daylight. "You don't belong here." It came from everywhere and nowhere. My throat closed, and I dropped to one knee, weapon trained but useless against the sound itself. The grass parted, and a figure walked forward, coat dripping, hat brim low. No face, just a darkness within the darkness. I snapped off the mag light, stumbled back, and turned for the cruiser, and found it gone, replaced by the empty field, tire tracks leading nowhere. The world spun, rain slicing across my vision. I stumbled forward, following the tracks as if they might lead back, but each step sank me deeper into mud and questions. And in that field, under low clouds and the dying echo of thunder, I understood the truth. Whatever haunted Highway 41, whatever I'd chased into the mill and through the night, was a part of the road itself, endless and patient, waiting for me to catch up. I raised the mag light again, cannoning the beam across the field, but only darkness stared back. Then, just beyond the drop of the light, I felt it, eyes watching. And I knew I still didn't have an answer. I stumbled forward through the muddy pasture, each footfall sinking me deeper until I was lifting my legs out with effort. The rain hammered down like a warning, and lightning flickered through the clouds, illuminating the field in fractured bursts. I forced the mag light's beam ahead, following the faint impressions of tire tracks that should have led to my cruiser, but the indentations vanished as quickly as they'd appeared, dissolving into nothing more than churned earth. My lungs burned with each inhalation of damp air. My uniform clung to my skin, cold and heavy. A low rumble of thunder rolled overhead, and I raised my eyes to the horizon just as another flash split the sky. In that split-second glare, I saw something perched on a fence post at the field's edge, something that looked like a scarecrow fashioned from road signs and bits of flannel, yet it moved. The head tilted toward me, slow and deliberate, as if studying my every step. I clicked the mag light off to test my nerves. The field fell into pitch darkness, an ocean of black that swallowed the scarecrow and the horizon beyond. "Leave," whispered a voice inside my skull, so intimate I could almost believe it my own thought. I pressed a hand to my temple, as if to pinch away the suggestion, but my fingers found clammy skin in the weight of my helmet. I keyed the radio, thumb trembling. "Martinez, dispatch, anybody." Only static answered, the hiss so loud I could imagine it drowning out the world itself. I realized I'd been shouting, knuckles white on the mic. I exhaled slowly, trying to slow the drumbeat in my ears. I set the mag light on the ground, flashlight facing upward, casting a harsh cone of brightness into the sky. I crouched beside it, weapon held loosely in one hand, and scanned the field. The rain slowed, as though nature itself had paused to listen. Droplets hung in the beam, suspended like crystal beads. Then I saw movement. Footprints. Not the wide tread of my cruiser's tires, but boot prints, smaller, narrower, leading from where the scarecrow had stood, weaving toward me through the grass. My heart stuttered. I rose, holster sliding against my hip, and followed the prints, each step carefully placed so as not to lose the trail. They wove in tight arcs, doubling back on themselves, as though the walkers circled me again and again. The more I moved, the more they appeared. Footprints crossing over footprints, an intricate web of passage tracing patterns I couldn't decipher. In the dim beam, the mud clung to the tread in shapes that resembled code or glyphs, but I blinked, and they turned to indistinct smears. I paused beneath a lone oak standing sentinel in the field. The trunk was broad and gnarled, roots exposed like arthritic fingers. I rested my hand on the bark, cold, rough, and felt a vibration, so slight I thought it was my own tremor. The ground beneath me seemed to pulse, as though something stirred kilometers below. My radio clicked to life, a single word filtering through the static. Follow. I snapped the mag light back on, pinpointed a set of prints that curved around the oak, and resumed pursuit. I realized I'd abandoned protocol entirely. No call to dispatch, no waiting for backup. Years of training evaporated under the weight of necessity. I had to know. The footprints led me to a shallow depression in the ground, a natural hollow filled with rainwater. The muddy surface reflected the beam like a mirror. I shined the light down, handprints, my own, pressed into the muck, as though I'd knelt there, looked into that pool. I hadn't. A flash of lightning, and the hollow glowed momentarily like silver. In that flash, I glimpsed something swimming just beneath the water's surface. A pale face, eyes open, staring, and then gone as the thunder boomed. I staggered back, raised my pistol in an instinctive gesture toward the empty hollow. The mag light shifted, revealing nothing but ripples that coalesced into concentric circles, and then stilled. Raindrops began to fall again, harder, as though trying to wash away what I'd seen. I felt a pulse of vertigo and crouched to stabilize myself. The field blurred in the rain, and I blinked repeatedly until the sight cleared. The footprints had vanished, no trace beyond my own, leading in circles around the oak. The scarecrow on the fence post was gone. The field was empty. My radio crackled. "Are you there?" It was Martinez. Her voice was urgent, clipped. I pressed the mic. "Martinez, it's Forrester. I'm out here, on the old service road south of marker 14. I need you to get someone." The mic cut out, replaced by static that hummed like distant machinery. I shook it, cursed under my breath. Then I heard tires, gentle, persistent, rolling across grass. I spun, mag light sweeping. A sedan, not marked, glided into view, headlights off, tail lights glowing faintly. It stopped beside me without a sound. The engine was silent. The driver's door opened. No light inside, no one moved. The second door opened too. No sound of latches, only the quiet click of invisible hinges. Then the line of the roof sagged inward, as though something heavy hunched beneath. I raised the mag light, but my beam passed through the center of the car, a gap, black as a wound. I backed away, my boot digging into soft earth. The grass parted behind me and a figure emerged. A woman, uniformed, badge glinting. Deputy Martinez, her face expressionless under brimmed cap. Relief crashed through me, only to freeze cold when I saw her eyes. They were empty, glazed, unfocused. She stepped forward without sound. I shouted, "Martinez, stop!" But my voice crackled into nothing. She reached out, hand hovering an inch above my shoulder. Her lips parted, and I heard my own voice whisper in my ear, "It's time." She moved closer, slow, deliberate. I raised the pistol to fire, but the cylinder spun blank, no rounds left. My mag light flickered and died. And then the rain ceased. The field lay silent, the sky clearing. When the clouds parted, moonlight splintered across the hollow, reflecting on the puddle. I looked down and saw both of us staring back, her empty eyes, my own, wide with dread. I dropped to one knee, mind racing. My breath came in ragged gasps, and I knew I couldn't stay. I pushed past the apparition of Martinez, stumbling toward the service road. Behind me, I heard footsteps, but not mine. They followed, always just beyond the sound of my own boots. I didn't dare stop to look. The sedan's taillights blinked twice, like a slow heartbeat, then vanished into the open field. I burst onto the old road and ran toward Highway 41, letting the wind and faith carry me. The world seemed to tilt, the boundaries of reality fraying at the edges. And as I reached the tarmac, I looked back once, expecting to see the hollow, the footprints, the scarecrow. But there was nothing but grass swelling in the moonlight, and silence waiting to reclaim me. I knew then that whatever had been there, whatever I'd chased through rain and rotted mills, wasn't bound to place or time. It was in the night itself, patient, hungry, and already waiting for the next shift to begin. And that realization, more than thunder or footsteps, was what truly felt like a final warning. The highway's lights shimmered through the rain-streaked windshield as I burst onto the blacktop, boots slipping on the slick asphalt as I sprinted toward my cruiser. My chest heaved, each breath tasting of wet leather and panic. I yanked the door open, dove inside, and slammed it shut. The engine turned over at the first turn of the key. No sputter, no hesitation, and I spun the wheel, tires squealing as I rejoined Highway 41. My eyes darted to the dashboard clock, 1:47. Nearly 2 hours since I first spotted that abandoned Civic. My mind reeled, phantom figures, impossible footprints, a hollow sedan, Martinez's empty eyes, all bleeding into one exhausting blur of adrenaline and doubt. I forced the headlights on, must keep the road visible, must keep moving. The rain had tapered off to a light drizzle, tapping on the roof like frantic fingers. I flicked the wipers to intermittent, scanning the roadside for markers. Mile marker 15 glowed in the beam, faded orange against wet concrete. I slowed to a crawl, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, and peered out the driver's window. The ditch beside the road was shallow, filled with bramble and puddles. A shape moved in the ditch, half submerged, limbs folded like a corpse in prayer. I hit the brakes again, heart slamming. The cruiser rocked forward and the wipers peeled away streaks of water to reveal the body of a man, soaked through, eyes open and fixed straight ahead. He wore a uniform, white shirt, dark slacks, shoes polished to a mirror shine despite the mud. A name tag glinted, Forrester. My name. I pressed my palm to my mouth to stifle a scream and fumbled for the radio. My voice hitched when I spoke. "Dispatch, cancel." My words trailed off as the figure stirred. The man raised his head, revealing my own face, hollow-cheeked and lined with fear. He turned toward the road, lips parting, but no sound emerged. Then he climbed out of the ditch on all fours, wet uniform peeling from his skin, and stood upright, backlit by my headlights. I slammed the accelerator, tires spinning as I tried to leave, but the ditches on both sides dipped nearly into the woods. The cruiser skidded, and I countered the wheel. The hologram of my face in the ditch remained fixed in the rearview mirror as I fought for control. With a final jerk, the tires caught, and I launched back onto the highway, fishtailing until I straightened out. My knuckles whitened on the wheel. I didn't look back. I poured on speed, 50, 60 miles per hour, until the road straightened and the cornfields on either side blurred into silver stalks whispering in the wind. The radio crackled to life. Dispatch's calm voice. "Deputy Forrester, do you copy? You've been off the air?" I keyed the mic but hesitated. The tape recorded only my ragged breathing and the hum of the engine. Dispatch repeated, "Forrester, respond." My hand closed over the mic. I didn't answer. At mile marker 17, the road intersected with a narrow bridge over a creek. The guardrails were dented, paint chipped away by rust. I slowed to 15 miles per hour and edged across. Below, water flowed black and oily, reflecting the dim glow of the highway lights. I shone my spotlight down and froze. Dozens of faces pressed against the concrete, water swirling at their ankles. Men and women in uniforms I recognized. Keller, Martinez, the first missing deputy, old volunteers, all their eyes fixed upward. Their mouths moved, silent lips forming words I couldn't hear. My breath turned to steam in the cold cab. I leaned forward, squinting. They pressed flat against the concrete, as if weightless, unable to step into the water. One young man reached a hand out, fingertips brushing the underside of the bridge. In the stark beam, I saw blood, red as rust, trickling from a cut on his wrist. The water turned crimson around him. A tremor shook the cruiser. I jolted, hands flying to the wheel. The faces vanished, the water ran clear again, and every drop drained away, leaving only sludge and rotting leaves. The bridge groaned overhead. I staggered back, adrenaline spiking. I refused to look in the rearview mirror, but I saw out. Of the corner of my eye, something perched on the guardrail at the far end. A single, white-gloved hand. I passed under the bridge in a blur, tires humming on pavement. The hum turned to a pulse, echoing in my skull. I checked the clock. 2:03. 2 hours and 6 minutes since I'd started chasing phantoms. The diner at the next junction should have been open. 24-hour breakfast joint, neon sign buzzing. I steered toward the red glow on the horizon. Pulling into the parking lot, I killed the engine and sat in the dark. The sign flickered. Midnight Dine, open. I stepped out, coat flapping in the damp breeze, and walked toward the front door. The windows were fogged. I could hear the scrape of chairs and faint clatter of dishes. I pushed the door. It swung open to reveal empty booths, tables set for two. The lights overhead were dimmed, thermostat low. I advanced, boots echoing on tiled floor. A waitress rose from behind the counter, her uniform pristine, hair pinned back. She smiled, a practiced tilt of lips, and said, "Coffee?" The cup in her hand was steaming, though the diner's coffee urn sat empty. She set it before me and turned to walk away. I grabbed her arm. "Where's the cook? Where's everyone else?" The cup floated off the table, spilling dark liquid in perfect arcs. The waitress turned, glassy eyes meeting mine, but no face looked back, only a smooth mask. She tilted her head and whispered, "You're late." Her voice was a chorus of everyone I'd lost. The booth behind her filled with mist, taking shape. A table set for three. 2 empty chairs and one with a coat draped over it. I heard my own laughter, faint, taunting. I dropped the coffee, which shattered on the floor. The waitress vanished. The neon sign outside collapsed into static glow, and the diner's lights snapped off, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled for my mag light, heart hammering. The beam stuck at the entrance. The parking lot was empty. No cruiser, no footprints in the gravel. Just one booth's worth of spilled coffee and the echo of a diner bell that would never ring again. Alone again in the hush, I realized the story had changed. I wasn't following phantoms. I'd become one, caught in a loop of roadside horrors with no sunrise to break the cycle. And somewhere inside my mind, a new voice spoke, "Stay." My hand hovered over the door handle. The night outside waited, patient and dark. I swallowed, knowing I had to decide. But as the din of dripping coffee echoed in my ears, I understood that the road had already decided for me, and the only question left was whether I would ever find my way off it. Rain began to fall again as I stepped out of the diner's shadowed doorway, the sticky warmth of the tile floor giving way to chilled night air that settled heavy on my shoulders. The neon sign writhed with failing electricity, its letters blinking in a broken rhythm. Midnight. Ein. I slid my mag light into its holster, fumbled for the car keys in my pocket, and found nothing but loose change and a damp tobacco tin. Panic clawed at my throat. I patted every pocket, empty. My cruiser had vanished again, left behind by my own hands, or by something else that wanted me disoriented. I struck the side of my hip where the lockbox should have been secured, but felt only fabric and the hard outline of my badge. My breath hissed outward in short bursts as adrenaline flooded my system. I dove to check the pavement. No keys, no metal glint. A spent coffee cup lay near the entrance, its plastic shell crumpled like a discarded soul. I raised my eyes to the lot, empty under the spray of rain. The diner lights pulsed once, then winked out entirely. I stood in darkness, save for the street lamp at the lot's edge. I jogged toward it, every footstep soaked into the asphalt with a soft slap. Under its oiled glow, I spotted my shadow, lean, uniformed, hands clenched, and it flickered jaggedly in the puddles at my feet. I half expected another figure beside it, but there was only me and the night. I wiped rain from my brow, forcing myself to breathe. I reached to Radio Martinez, apologize for going dark, request backup, anything. But when I lifted my hand to my belt, I realized my radio wasn't there either. My heartbeat thundered. I slid my jacket aside and found only the smooth surface of my shirt's inner pocket. No gun, no radio, no mag light. I was stripped down to the vest, badge, and the uniform that clung to me like wet cotton. The rain intensified, pattering on the street lamp like shards of glass. I made for the road, determined to retrace my steps, to find the cruiser or the keys or the carbine I might need. I walked quickly, shoes squelching, toward the highway junction. The diner's blacked-out sign receded behind me, the world narrowing to the slick ribbon of tarmac and the dull glow of marker 18. I passed mile marker 18, a small metal post leaning crooked, paint flaking. I touched it, cold, and something jiggled in my hand. A car key, my own. Relief and suspicion warred in my chest. I bent to inspect it. A single embossed badge number on the fob, my number, 1427. No remote buttons, no ignition chip. Just this single cold key. I pocketed it and pressed on. A thin mist curled across the highway, obscuring my headlights. I clicked on my flashlight again, but with the battery long drained, it only flickered. I then remembered. In the diner, the waitress had stocked me with a coffee to warm up. The styrofoam cup sat on a low wall near the lamppost, half full and steaming despite the emptiness. I scooped my hand over the rim as if touching it might bridge reality. The coffee was lukewarm, stale, bitter, and I realized then that I hadn't drunk a drop as the waitress set it before me. Her silent smile and empty face echoed against my teeth. I turned the key in my hand, imagining the cruiser's ignition, and placed the cup beside the marker post. When I looked back, the coffee cup was gone. In its place, a single brown leaf, curled and crisp, covered in droplets that glowed under the lamp's electricity. I crouched and inspected the leaf. Etched in thin scratches across its surface was a set of numbers, 1943. Not a date I recognized, but it felt significant, like a time stamp on something older than me, as if the road itself had been marking years of emptiness. I stood and scanned the tree line. Nothing moved, only the silhouettes of pines, their needles dripping. My radio remained silent at my hip. I tapped the badge on my chest, half expecting dispatch to broadcast through it, but no voice answered. I was alone. Then, from deeper in the mist, I heard a hum. Low frequency, mechanical, reverberating through my skull. It grew louder with each heartbeat until the pavement beneath me seemed to vibrate. I gripped the key tighter, knuckles whitening. The mist thickened, swirling into shapes. Arches like distant overpasses, columns like collapsed bridges, structures that didn't exist here. Panic rose, but I held my ground. A faint orange glow appeared in the fog behind me. I spun the key between thumb and forefinger and raised the flashlight once more. The light caught on a distant shape. My cruiser, parked at a strange angle. Headlights off, doors open. Smoke curled from beneath the hood, like breath exhaled from a dying beast. I blinked, and it vanished. I took a step toward where it had been. My foot slid on a puddle. I stumbled, arrowed my flashlight to the ground. The rain paused, every droplet suspended in smell of wet earth. In the beams I saw footprints again, mine, leading from marker 18 toward the vanishing cruiser, then a second set intersecting mine, leading back into the mist. I swallowed hard, the cold key rattling in my palm. I turned to follow the second prints, but the mist parted to reveal a small shed. Rusted metal walls, an open doorway. The hum grew louder here, as though speakers inside emitted a low-frequency drone. The creek's gentle roar had vanished, replaced by this unnatural vibration. I found a crowbar leaning against the shed's frame, black iron pitted with rust. I hefted it, weapon of necessity. I stepped inside. The flashlight beam flickered across the interior. A single row of lockers, dented filing cabinets, and a crude table. On the tabletop lay a pile of objects. A dash cam, half buried in gravel. A torn police report stamped File number 41-003. A battered GPS unit still blinking. And a photograph, pinned to a corkboard, of a younger me standing in front of a precinct wall with Martinez beside me, both smiling. The date beneath read December 7th, 2003. My breath froze in my lungs. That was the night Forrester first disappeared. I reached for the photo. Gravel shifted. The dash cam light blinked once, then its lens swung upward. It was pointing directly at me. The screen flickered, a live feed of the shed's doorway. Behind me, the doorframe gleamed. I turned. Nothing moved beyond the entrance. Yet the feed showed a reflection of my face. Eyes wide, uniform damp, key clutched in my fist, lingering on the screen for a moment too long. Then the feed cut to static. In the silence, I heard distant sirens, one, then another. They grew louder, closer. Relief washed over me. Dispatch had sent backup. I dropped the crowbar and raced out of the shed, key raised as a beacon. I emerged onto the highway, only to find the road empty, sirens silent in the distance, the mist closing in behind me like a shroud. The key pulsed in my hand, warm. I realized I didn't know where my cruiser was, or even if it still belonged to this world. My vision narrowed to the single number etched on the leaf, 1943. The dash cam feed had ended at static, but the last frame, a face in the gloom, lingered in my mind. I heard footsteps again, light, hesitant in the gravel behind me. I turned, crowbar raised defensively, expecting Martinez or a deputy. Instead, a small wind, whipped through the mist, carrying a single phrase in a voice that was neither mine nor anyone I'd known. You asked to stay. Now it's your turn to wait. And in that moment I understood. Highway 41 wasn't a road to drive away from. It was a place where time folded in on itself, and anyone who wandered off the pavement became part of its endless patrol, forever hunting, never found. The storm broke above me as I stood at the edge of the asphalt, mist curling around my boots like grasping fingers. My lungs burned with cold air, and every muscle trembled from exhaustion and adrenaline. I pressed the key, still warm, in my palm, wishing it would start something familiar, some machine that would carry me away. But the night offered only silence, thick as tar, pressing into my ears until I could hear nothing but my own heartbeat. I took a step back from the shed, the doors now sealed tight, the corrugated metal walls silent witnesses to what had transpired within. Behind me, the highway stretched on, a ribbon of promise that had betrayed me again and again. I raised the crowbar, resting the worn iron against my shoulder, and glanced at mile marker 18, its paint flaking, its post leaning like an old man's stoop. In the faint beam of my dying flashlight, I thought I saw a flicker of motion there, but when I blinked, nothing remained. Every instinct screamed to run, to pound my way down the road until I found the next town, the nearest precinct, any flicker of human life. But I was tethered by something deeper, a compulsion to see this through, to map the edges of whatever had claimed so many before me. I tightened my grip on the crowbar and advanced toward the marker, the key a leaden weight in my pocket. As I passed, the air shifted, the mist parting for a breath. And in that breath, I heard it. The distant echo of my own transmission, warped and distant. "Don't wait." The words hung in the air, carried on the wind that had no warmth. I spun, flashlight sweeping the darkness, but the source eluded me. Only the road lay ahead, silent and patient. I knelt beside the post, running a finger along its edge. Embedded in the rough metal, carved deep, were more numbers. 1427, the number on my badge. My breath hitched. I had found my number etched beneath the date from the photograph. 2 timestamps, one marking my beginning, one marking the end. The key in my pocket vibrated, a subtle pulse, as though sensing the post's carved digits. I drew it out and pressed it against the metal, expecting nothing. But the key fit into a thin crack along the seam where 2 sections of the marker met. It slid in deep, clicking into hidden teeth. My heartbeat thundered. I twisted. The ground trembled. Roots beneath the asphalt groaned. The mile marker shuddered and swung open like a door. Behind it yawned a narrow passage, descending into darkness. A faint glow pulsed from below, like the heartbeat of something immense. The hum I'd heard in the shed thrummed through the metal, resonating in my bones. I hesitated, knowing every second drew another heartbeat closer, another pair of footsteps behind me. But the answer lay down there, the faces in the water, the phantom deputy, the abandoned cruiser, all threads woven into this secret seam beneath the marker. I set my jaw, hefted the crowbar in one hand and flashlight in the other, and stepped into the opening. The passage swallowed me. Cold earth pressed against my legs, and the hum grew louder, echoing off unseen walls. My breath formed clouds in the beam. Roots and wires coiled along the earthen tunnel, leading down into a cathedral of soil and stone. Each step felt like crossing a boundary, peeling away layers of night itself. Then, at the bottom, I entered a chamber carved from bedrock, lit by lines of phosphorescent lichen. A vault of impossible construction, walls etched with symbols that mirrored the glyphs in the mud. At the center stood an altar of rusted metal, a cradle of dashboard components, keys, radios, flashlights, an altar built from every tool I'd carried. On top lay my cruiser's hood emblem, polished and still warm. I set the crowbar down, voice shaking as I spoke into the hush. What are you? The lichen pulsed in reply, and the symbols around me seemed to shift, aligning into a single phrase glowing on the rock. You belong to the road. A ripple of truth passed through me, and I understood. The road was a living thing, feeding on departure and return, collecting names and faces to sustain its endless midnight watch. The vanished motorists, the missing deputies, all woven into its endless circuit. The keys in my pocket pulsed once more, and I felt my pulse align with the hum, my heartbeat synchronizing with the road's own rhythm. I tried to turn, to flee back up the tunnel, but roots snaked around my ankles, binding me to the earth. I dropped to my knees before the altar, the crowbar clattering beside me. My uniform felt heavy, drenched with rain that now seemed to seep through the stone. I raised my hand, touching the hood emblem, warmth spreading through my fingers. Above, the hum crescendoed into a roar. A single tendril of lichen detached and floated to rest on my shoulder, cool and alive. I whispered, "I don't want to stay." But my voice was lost in the chamber's resonance. I felt the roots tug at me, drawing me forward. With one last, shuddering breath of will, I jammed the key into a slot in the emblem. The world trembled. Light flared. I found myself back on the highway, drenched in rain, mile marker 18, standing silent and whole. My crowbar lay across the asphalt. My flashlight was dead. The key was gone. Above me, the sky was empty. Stars hidden behind clouds. My radio clicked. Dispatch. Their tentative voice asked if I was okay. I pressed the mic, throat tight, and whispered, "I'm still here." No reply. Only the road stretching into darkness, waiting for my next shift. And in the distance, the echo of impossibly distant footsteps, mine or someone else's, beckoned me onward into the night. I remember the hush settling over the motorcade as I eased my cruiser onto the side street, tires crunching on gravel that floated through the beam of my headlights like drifting snow. It was just past midnight, and the glow from the last houses on Oakmont Drive had died out 50 yards back, leaving me alone beneath the street lamps that flickered like old bulbs in a horror movie. My radio was quiet except for distant static. No calls, no chatter, nothing to break the stillness except the rhythmic thunk of my boots as I stepped from the car. I angled my flashlight down the sidewalk, watching the beam carve paths through cracked concrete, each fissure breathing with the chill April air. The scanners had picked up a 911 hang-up 15 minutes ago from a payphone outside Montgomery's Gas and Groceries, but the line went dead the instant the dispatch echoed. No voice, no breath. Just the click of dialing and then silence. Pretty routine at this hour. Kids messing around, drunks testing payphones, wrong numbers. But out here, wrong numbers can set your nerves on edge, so you still at least check. I clipped my radio mic, whispered, "Unit 37 to dispatch." Checking the hang-up at Montgomery's. ETA 2 minutes. My voice sounded low and tired through the mask of the mic, like when you've spoken too much and want to swallow every word. No response came, just soft clatters in the air. I clicked off and moved down the sidewalk, feeling the weight of my flashlight in one hand and the cool butt of my service weapon in the other pocket. Routine gear, but when you've done this shift 1,000 times, every weight feels heavier at 2 in the morning. The gas station sat on the corner, a lone island of fluorescent light in a sea of black asphalt. The pumps were empty, no cars, no customers, no clerk in sight. I paused at the sliding glass door and tapped it with the heel of my hand. No sign, just the faint hum of refrigerators and the distant drip, drip, drip of a leaking cooler somewhere behind the counter. My flashlight crawled across the aisles. Shelves half stocked with chips, energy drinks, gum. I stepped inside, boots echoing, and swept the beam across the row of dusty registers, all inactive. I turned toward the stockroom door at the far end, noticed it slightly ajar. My gut tightened, which it rarely did, but something about that crack in the door stopped me cold. I called it in. Unit 37, I'm inside Montgomery's. Back door ajar, no clerk in view. My words hung in the stagnant air. No answer, probably a glitch. Dispatch sometimes goes quiet this time of night. I shoved the door open with my flashlight leading and found a small storeroom stacked with empty boxes and broken pallets. The walls were scuffed, faded company logos, paper flyers curling at the corners. A single broom leaning as though it had been abandoned in a hurry. I swept the beam toward the far corner and saw a dark shape, propped against the stacked boxes. A baseball cap, nondescript jeans, work boots, too still. I swallowed and cleared my throat. "Sir, police department." My voice was low, but carried. The shape stirred, lunged forward in a clumsy sprint. I yanked my weapon free without thought, training kicking in. But when the man slammed into me, there was no anger, no struggle, only confusion. He knocked us both to the concrete floor with a clang, boxes rattling overhead. I had him pinned at once, knee on his chest, flashlight knocked from my grip and rolling across debris. His eyes were wide, staring up as sweat and dirt trickled down his face. He gasped, "Please, I thought it was a cop." My jaw clenched. "I am," I said, voice flat, knowing that to him it meant nothing. I hauled him up by the collar, saw the payphone receipt in his hand. The code the dispatch console spat out after every hang-up. He must have been the one who called. He swallowed, stammered. I left my wallet at a call box up the street, thought someone might find it." His voice cracked. I was checking. I patted him down, found only lint, keys, that crumpled receipt, and a cheap lighter in his pocket. No weapon, no script of violence. Still, my heart thudded against my ribs. It always rattled when someone lunged at me, even if they didn't mean harm. I lifted him to his feet, spotted my flashlight 10 feet away. I grabbed it and swung the beam back onto his face. The dim circle of light revealed more exhaustion and fear than menace. "Listen," I said, voice steady yet rough around the edges. "You got lucky. This is a slow night, but it can turn ugly fast." I slid my hand onto his shoulder, felt him tense beneath my grip. "You call next time. Don't do this again." I stepped back, reached for the radio, but before I could speak, his eyes drifted beyond me, to something in the shadows outside the doorway. My chest tightened. Whatever he saw, I saw next. The front door, slightly open, swinging soft like a heartbeat in the dark. I spun, flashlight slicing the darkness at the entrance. Nothing moved, no shape, no silhouette, just the empty glass doorway framing the empty street. My breath caught. The man's voice trembled behind me. "What the hell is that?" I flicked off the safety and clicked the radio again. "Dispatch, this is Unit 37. Reporting the front door just opened. No sign of clerk or any other person inside or out." Silence answered. Then the soft sigh of a breeze slipping through the gap, carrying with it the distant echo of something unrecognizable on the CB, a broken whisper that cut off before it finished. I lowered my weapon, heart still pounding. "We're clear," I said, though I didn't feel clear. I flipped the man's hands behind his back and slapped cuffs on him. Not because I believed he was guilty of anything more than trespass, but because at that hour, you never know. I led him outside under the sickly wash of street lamp glow. The payphone was dark, the sidewalk empty, the open door yawning behind us. He mumbled, "You gonna let me go?" I stared at the trembling form in cuffs and shook my head. "We'll sort it at the station," I said. My voice echoed oddly in the stillness, and for a moment I felt older than I'd ever felt before. Like the weight of every shift, every wrong beat, every unanswered call had settled on my shoulders. I loaded him into the cruiser, closed the door, and watched him in the rearview mirror. His face was twisted with regret, and something like relief that he wasn't alone in that darkness. I climbed in, flicked the siren off, and pulled back onto the street, ready to log the incident. But my eyes kept darting toward that ajar door at Montgomery's, wondering who had left it, and why no one answered when I called. And as I drove back toward the station, the radio finally crackled to life with another routine report: a stray cat in someone's yard, and I stiffened because somewhere between the hang-up and the cuffed man in my back seat, I'd felt that familiar tug in my gut. The unease that comes when you're sure something's off, but you can't yet name what it is. I pulled the cruiser into the parking lot of the station and killed the engine, but I didn't reach for the console lights or open the rear door right away. Instead, I sat there in the damp glow of the overhead lamp, listening to my own breathing and trying to calm the tremor in my hands. The man in cuffs stared out at me through the darkened window, his silhouette half-framed by yellow police tape that flapped in the breeze. I still couldn't shake the image of that front door swinging open at Montgomery's. No clerk, no explanation. And now a stranger in my back seat whose only crime might have been curiosity. Finally, I unclipped the mic. "Dispatch, this is Unit 37. I'm at the station with one in custody for trespassing. Stand by for booking." As the radio crackled its acknowledgement, I reached across the console, unlocked the door, and opened it, letting the stale night air flood the cabin. The man climbed out and stumbled toward the booking room, head bowed but shoulders rigid. I gave him a nod, more out of habit than anything, and watched him go, then closed the door and let the click of the lock echo louder than I wanted it to. I headed inside, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, peeling back the weight of the night. The booking desk was empty, the clerical chair spun away from the keyboard. I set my flashlight and cuffs on the counter and cleared my throat. My name and badge number went into the report, a sketchy narrative of what had happened at Montgomery's. I wrote "no sign of clerk" 3 times, like a mantra, hoping someone reading it the next day would feel the same chill I did when that door swung open. But even as I typed, the words felt hollow. They didn't capture the low, metallic click of that door hinge, or the sudden sense that someone, or something, was just beyond the threshold. They didn't explain the way the man in cuffs glared back at the empty lot, half expecting him to see another shape in the dark. By the time I finished, the station was quieter than it had been when I arrived. Only the distant hum of the refrigerator and the scrape of chair legs on the linoleum punctuated the silence. I stepped away from the desk and wandered toward the evidence lockers, hoping the familiar routine would settle my nerves. Inside, rows of numbered shelves held cases from petty larcenies to more serious offenses, each tagged with barcodes and dates. I keyed the door open, slipped in, and took a breath, smelling the faint scent of cardboard and steel. I stared down the aisles, my reflection warped in the polished glass of evidence bags. Somewhere in those lockers belonged the notebook I'd confiscated, the one with the surveillance notes, security codes, and patterns of people's lives. I thought about that book sitting in cold storage, its pages etched with other people's routines, their vulnerabilities laid bare. And I wondered how many nights I had spent collecting details in my own notebook, logging license plates and foot patrol observations, all in service of keeping people safe. A soft beep from the radio jolted me. Unit 12 to dispatch. Possible hit and run on South Elm. I tapped my mic. Unit 37 en route. The calm of the station shattered in that instant. Another call, another code, another moment demanding action. I shut the evidence locker and grabbed my flashlight and radio, feeling the familiar weight of both settle in my hands. Outside, the night was heavier. The moon was hidden by clouds, and the street lamps cast more shadows than light. I jogged to my cruiser, the gravel crunching underfoot, every sound amplified in the silence. As I pulled away, I glanced back at the station's dim windows. No movement behind them, just a blank stare. But I knew what was locked away inside. Fragments of lives, secrets whispered on shift, and the realization that everyone's safety was only as strong as the person wearing the badge. The radio crackled again. Suspect description: black SUV, last seen eastbound. Victim's report says struck at speed, didn't stop. Witnesses hazy. I flicked on the overhead lights and turned onto South Elm Road, the glow revealing a slick sheen on the asphalt from an earlier rain. I drove fast, but not reckless. Years of training reminded me that haste could kill as easily as the impact of a speeding vehicle. As I approached the scene, the street curved gently between rows of shuttered storefronts. Neon signs flickered off and on, their colors bleeding into one another like ghosts of commerce past. I slowed and parked myself about 50 feet from a lean-to of traffic cones, then stepped out, boots thudding, flashlight and weapon raised. I scanned the storefronts. No broken glass, no skid marks, just a pool of dark fluid glinting beneath a single street lamp. I dared not think what it was until I got closer. I knelt and examined the scene. Oil mixed with something deeper, red-brown and sticky. Fresh footprints circled it. Muddy, but no sign of tire tread. I stood and shone my light down the street, searching for a vehicle, a witness, anything. But all I saw was a lone newspaper stand, its headline torn away, and a surveillance camera mounted high on the corner of a building, its red recording light blinking. I radioed dispatch, requested footage, and as I spoke, I heard the soft hiss of a door opening behind me. I spun, flashlight cutting through the gloom. A figure stood there, half hidden in shadow, eyes reflecting the beam. My heart skipped. "Police!" I barked, stepping forward. The figure didn't move, just held still, as if waiting. Each flicker of the light revealed more. A uniform, crisp and clean, boots shining, badge polished. A fellow officer, except no one had called for backup. No one fit his description. Yet there he was, standing as though he'd been there all along. My voice caught. "Who the hell are you?" The figure raised a hand, slow and deliberate, and whispered, "I'm here to help." His tone was soft, weary, too weary for someone who just walked into a crime scene. I leveled my flashlight on his face. The jaw was too square, the eyes too hollow, and the nameplate gleamed in the light. Thomas Warren. I froze. The name that had haunted me for months. The face that had betrayed every trust. The badge that should have been locked away with his charade. And here he was, stepping out of the shadows again, as real and impossible as the rusted ridge of the horizon. My fingers itched at my holster. He tilted his head and said, "We need to talk." And in that moment, under the wavering glow of the street lamp, I realized the night wasn't done with me yet. And whatever truth I thought I'd uncovered was just the beginning of something darker. I stepped out of the cruiser and leaned against the hood, letting the cold metal press against my back as I drew in a shallow breath. The late spring air had a bite to it, like a warning scratch against the skin, and I could feel the tension in my shoulders, knotted tight from the endless loop of shift work. The street lamp overhead flickered twice, then steadied, casting a half-light that made the world beyond its glow feel impossibly dark. I snapped my flashlight on and swept it across the storefront windows again, half expecting to catch a figure slipping away. A glint of badge or boot, anything. But there was only the drizzle of rain starting to speckle the pavement, each droplet landing silently, as though the world were holding its breath. My radio sat on the passenger seat, squawking about responding units, but I muted it and exhaled, focusing on the rhythm of wet boots on concrete as I approached the flickering neon open sign that hummed quietly above a shuttered pawn shop. My eyes flicked to the surveillance camera above the doorway, its red LED pulsing with slow inevitability, recording, always recording. I imagined that tiny lens had captured every step, every hesitation, every bead of sweat forming on my brow. Somewhere in a boring, fluorescent-lit evidence room, that footage would play back and tell the story exactly as I lived it. A lone officer, flashlight beam cutting through the night, chasing the echo of his own fears. The rain began to fall harder, drumming against my patrol cap and the concrete. I flipped the brim up and zipped my jacket, then scanned the storefronts lining the block. A closed barber shop, its sign dangling on one hinge, a boarded-up diner with its neon letters half shattered, a vacant auto parts store, its door padlocked, the glass smeared with raindrops. Each place felt abandoned, halfway to oblivion, like memories waiting to be forgotten. I was about to call dispatch for clearance to search inside each business, to rule out squatters or vandals, when my flashlight caught something on the ground. A single paper coffee cup, crumpled, half full of cold grounds. Odd to find that this far past midnight, unless someone was camping inside. I kicked it gently, sending it skittering across the sidewalk. The clatter echoed unnaturally, and I froze, listening. In the distance, a siren wailed briefly, then cut off, as though ashamed of itself. I crouched and scooped up the cup. Inside, the grounds were flattened by time, but the bottom held a faint smear of red, coffee stained by something darker. My stomach clenched. I turned it over to see the disposable lid cracked, the warning label peeled. No fingerprints, nothing definitive. Yet it felt like a message. Someone had been here, and they'd left a trace that whispered of blood without showing it. I straightened and swept the beam of my flashlight down the alley that ran between the diner and the pawn shop. The narrow corridor was lined with dumpsters and coil-topped fences, the puddles reflecting the weak glow of the lampposts behind me. I felt the weight of solitude settle in my chest, an ache I knew too well. I took a step forward, the flashlight bobbing, illuminating the wet bricks and discarded flyers. One fluttered in the wind, its torn corner reading, "Community Watch Meeting Thursday 7 p.m. I remembered that name, used it myself on patrol reports when I needed to fill space, but this night every scrap of paper seemed to carry significance. Halfway down the alley, the rain slowed to a drizzle, and I caught movement at the far end. A figure hunched beside a chain-link fence, head bowed, shoulders shaking. My heart thumped so hard I could hear it in my ears. I called out, "Hey, you, come here." But the figure didn't move. I flicked off the safety and raised my weapon, training taking over. "Police, show me your hands." The figure stirred, rose slowly. I advanced, each step a calculated measure, flashlight and gun aligned. When I was close enough, I saw the badge pinned to his chest, old, tarnished, the edges worn. His uniform was the same cut as mine but faded, like a memory washed by too much time. "Lieutenant Dave Mercer," he said, voice low, as if speaking from underwater. My blood ran cold. I'd known Mercer. He'd been one of the first I met at the academy. A gruff mentor who taught me to handle a cruiser, to read a scene, to carry the weight of the badge without letting it crush me. He'd retired a decade ago, disappeared from the radar. Rumor was he'd moved back to Toledo to care for his ailing mother. But here he was, ghost-like, standing in the rain. "Mercer?" I whispered, disbelief cracking my voice. "What are you doing here?" He lifted his chin, water dripping from his jaw. His eyes glinted in the beam, hollow, haunted. "I came back," he said, voice barely audible. "There's something you need to see." I should have holstered my weapon, reached out, called his name. Instead, I stayed rigid, every muscle tensed. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "What are you talking about?" He gestured down the alley. "Follow me." He turned and walked further into the shadows, without waiting for me. My mind raced. Had he been watching me, learning the routes, the habits, the gaps in coverage? Or had he simply come to warn me? I followed, stepping through pooled water that soaked my boots. The alley narrowed to a tunnel beneath the railroad tracks, the rumble of a distant train vibrating through the walls. Mercer stopped at a crumbling concrete wall, ran his hand along graffiti-cracked surface, then pressed a loose brick. The wall shuddered and swung inward on rusted hinges, revealing a hidden stairwell descending into darkness. My grip tightened on my weapon. "Mercer, I began, but he cut me off. "They never left," he said, voice echoing off the brick. "Pierce never left." He reached for my arm. His skin was cold, clammy, like the damp air around us. "He's here, watching." A distant train horn blared overhead. My flashlight flickered as I looked up at the tunnel roof, at the steel tracks above, knowing that every noise, every echo, every drop of water could mask someone moving behind me. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. Mercer nodded. "Come on." He slipped inside the opening and disappeared. The bricked entry swung closed with a groan. I stared at it for a long moment, rain dripping from my uniform, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the rain. I pushed against the heavy brick door and let it swing shut behind me with a groan that echoed down the narrow stairwell. The air that greeted me was colder, damp, and tasted of rust and decay. My boots echoed on the metal steps, each footfall a measured pulse, until I reached the landing, where the stairwell leveled out into a short corridor lit by a single, flickering bulb. The light buzzed and dimmed, then brightened with a reluctant flare, revealing damp concrete walls streaked with old water stains and graffiti that time had smudged almost unreadable. I swallowed and swallowed again, tasting the dust in my throat, and found Mercer standing at the far end, back pressed against the wall as though bracing himself for what came next. He nodded at the corridor, his eyes heavy but clear. "It used to be a utility tunnel," he said, voice low, "for the old mill when this town still had factories. They filled most of it in years ago, but a few passages remained, forgotten, hidden. I came back because I remembered rumors of what Pierce found down here." He flicked his hand toward a peeling sign overhead that read, "Authorized personnel only," its letters nearly scrawled away by time. My heart pounded as I stepped forward, passing dusty cables hanging from the ceiling like slack rope. The walls on either side narrowed, forming a claustrophobic channel that pressed in around me. I switched off my flashlight briefly to let my eyes adjust, then back on, the beam dancing over broken pipes and dripping joints. "Pierce," I said, voice tight. "You think he used this place after he slipped away from the station?" Mercer's jaw clenched. "Not after," he said. "During." He tapped his finger on the damp wall. He had a way of disappearing on patrol, slipping out through doors we thought we'd locked, taking back routes we never even knew existed. This place, he mapped it. I found fragments of his notes, a sketch of the tunnels, annotations in that chicken-scratch handwriting. I came back to see for myself. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. I unfolded it, my fingers trembling slightly. There was a crude diagram, straight corridors meeting at right angles, labeled with words like gas main, electrical vault, and, further down, storage. Beneath that, a scribble. Safe room? I looked up at Mercer. Safe room? He nodded. I think he stashed things here, his loot, his backup, maybe more. His eyes met mine in the half-light. And maybe he never left. My pulse thundered in my ears. I slid the map into my pocket and switched my flashlight back on, following Mercer as he led the way deeper into the subterranean veins. Each step kicked up fine dust that clung to my boots. The walls dripped with condensation and the air was thick enough to swallow a shout. I found myself breathing through my collar, every breath sounding loud in that enclosed space. At one junction, Mercer paused and ran a gloved hand along the wall, brushing aside a layer of grime to reveal the edge of a metal plate set flush with the concrete. He pressed it hard, and it popped inward with a mechanical click. The panel swung outward to reveal a narrow shaft, barely wide enough for me to squeeze through. I glanced at Mercer, then into the void. A shaft plunging straight down, the bottom lost in darkness. My flashlight beam vanished within a body length of the opening. Mercer paused, looking back at me. "No turning back," he said quietly. I felt every nerve in my body stretch taut at the thought, but I didn't hesitate. I lowered myself into the shaft, every inch of contact on wet metal sending a rush up my spine. I landed on a gravel floor that crunched under my weight. The shaft entry sealed above us as Mercer pushed the plate closed, plunging us into near darkness save for our flashlights. We were in a larger chamber, carved roughly into the earth, about the size of a small living room. The walls were scrubbed concrete, the ceiling low, and the air smelled of mold and motor oil. Scattered around were empty wooden crates stamped with old Safeguard Solutions labels, boxes that once held alarm components, wiring harnesses, sensors. Most were broken down, their debris strewn across the floor, but one crate remained intact, sealed with heavy-duty tape. Mercer stepped over a pile of rusty tools and knelt beside it, tracing his fingers along the logo. I scanned the space. In one corner, a pile of yellowed newspapers from the spring of '84, the front pages screaming headlines about Ridgewood break-ins, stolen jewelry, and a rogue officer. I stifled a groan. Those were the overnight clippings I'd filed away after the scandal first broke. Around the perimeter, I noticed footprints pressed into dust. Boots, sneakers, single prints, doubled prints, some smeared like whoever wore them had panicked and dragged their feet. At the center of the room stood a makeshift desk, a battered wooden plank balanced on 2 cinder blocks. On it lay a stack of black notebooks, the kind designed for police field notes, each tied with frayed twine. I approached and lifted the top one, flipping it open to reveal tight rows of meticulous script. Times, dates, addresses, schedules of residence, alarm codes, surveillance notes, and at the bottom of one page, a shaky circle drawn around 12:47 a.m. Next, South Elm. My throat constricted. I looked up at Mercer. He was planning another run. Mercer traced my gaze. I pulled surveillance from that night, no break-in reported, but the cameras glitched for exactly 3 minutes. That was his window. He pointed to a page where Pierce had scribbled instructions. Find access under Elm stairwell. Bypass lock with pulse device. No witnesses. The words felt like a punch to the gut. I closed the notebook and slid it back onto the desk. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the torch. Footsteps sounded behind us, light, deliberate. coming from the corridor we'd entered. I whirled, flashlight carving arcs through the gloom. Mercer straightened, reaching for his gun. A figure stepped into the chamber's entrance, a silhouette in dark uniform, badge gleaming faintly. My heart seized. My finger hovered on the trigger even as my mind refused the realization. The figure lowered his head, and I saw the face. Warren. His eyes glittered in the torchlight, and he smiled. An empty, practiced smile before raising his hand in a slow salute. "You shouldn't be down here," he said, voice calm. "This place isn't safe." The words rolled over me like ice water. He stepped forward, boots echoing on gravel. "You found my hideout." He gestured at the crates, the desk, the field notebooks. "Not many do. You and Mercer both took quite a risk." Mercer leveled his own weapon. "Let us go, Warren," he said. "It's over." Warren's smile faded. He shook his head as though disappointed. "It's never over," he said, stepping closer. The air grew colder still, and I felt a sickness twist in my gut. He reached out as if to brush dust from one of the notebook covers, but then withdrew his hand. "You've seen too much." His eyes locked onto mine. "Now you'll be part of it." He turned to Mercer. "You know what happens to traitors," he said softly. Mercer's jaw clenched. I raised my voice. "We're calling this in." My radio lay on the desk, almost in reach. Mercer took a step forward, but Warren's gaze swung to me, and something in that look held us both back. The silence that followed was louder than any gunshot. Dripping water, distant hum of machinery, our own breaths in the hollow space. Warren tilted his head, then said, "Not yet." He scuffed a boot against the gravel and looked down at Mercer. "We started something that night at Montgomery's. You think it was just trespassing? That you caught a kid lost in the dark? Number, that was the beginning." He swept his arm to include the crates and notebooks. "This is the end game, the full circle." Blood pounded in my ears. "I'm not letting you walk out of here," I said. My voice cracked, betraying my fear. Warren smiled again, slow and deliberate, as though amused by my earnest defiance. "You won't have a choice," he said. Then he turned on his heel and walked back toward the sealed shaft door. Without pausing, he pressed the brick, and the panel swung open. Before Mercer or I could react, he slipped inside and vanished as the plate clanged shut. I stared at the sealed entry, the metal once again flush with the concrete. Mercer whispered, "He set this up to lock from the other side." I sank to my knees beside the desk, eyes flicking to the scattered crates. The notebooks rested there, humming with hidden knowledge, tiny time bombs waiting to be read. My radio lay silent. The tunnel outside remained still, as though Warren's presence had sucked the life out of even the dripping pipes. I looked at Mercer, voice barely a whisper. "What do we do now?" He closed his eyes, shook his head slowly. "We wait?" The word tasted bitter. I stood and moved to the desk, reaching for the top notebook, feeling the weight of every secret Pierce had recorded. As I lifted it, the pages rustled, and I thought I heard a whisper, like someone exhaling through cracked lips. I froze. Silence reclaimed the chamber. Then, from somewhere beyond the sealed door, came a soft, deliberate pulse. 3 clicks, like the sound of a lock turning back into place. My heart stopped. The tunnel behind us lay dark and final, and the notebook trembled in my hand. I realized in that moment that this nightmare had roots deeper than I'd ever imagined, and that Warren Pierce had orchestrated it all to draw me into his final act. I looked at Mercer, voice a rasping breath. "He's here," I said, and before I could blink, the lights overhead sputtered out, plunging us into absolute darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight in the pitch dark. the beam sputtering to life and illuminating Mercer's pale face inches from mine. His eyes were wide, reflecting the narrow circle of light, and I felt the cold press of his uniform against mine. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the tunnel around us silent save for the distant drip of water and our own ragged breathing. Then, from somewhere deeper in the chamber, came a soft scuff, faint, careful, like someone testing the floor for strength. I swallowed and lifted my radio to my mouth. Unit 37, request immediate backup, suspect on scene. No transmission. My hand froze. The radio's display glowed red. Error. My throat tightened. Backup wouldn't make it down here in time, and our calls for help were already trapped inside these walls. I clicked it off. Mercer's hand closed on my arm, his grip tight and urgent. "We need to move," he whispered. He backed into me, shifting toward the crates and notebooks that lay scattered across the floor. I slid the top notebook into my jacket pocket, fingers brushing Mercer's briefly before I pivoted toward the narrow corridor. We both knew the hidden shaft exit would be sealed from the other side. No chance of retreat. The only way out was forward, into whatever waited in the darkness beyond. We crept down the tunnel, flashlight beams locked together, revealing moss-slick walls and twisted pipes overhead. Every drip echoed like a gunshot, and the stale air burned in my lungs. I kept my weapon raised, finger poised, half expecting Warren's silhouette to step out of the gloom at any moment. Mercer followed a half-foot behind, eyes darting to every shadow, his breathing ragged but controlled. At the junction, we paused. The map Mercer had found showed a fork, left leading uphill to a grated door marked Maintenance, right plunging further into a low-ceilinged crawl space labeled Tunnel 4. The maintenance exit looked promising, could be street level, but the grate was locked, rusted shut. A quick push did nothing but echo our defeat. Mercer shook his head. No choice, Tunnel 4. I swallowed, angled my flashlight down the right passage. The ceiling dipped so low I had to stoop, each step forcing my knees toward my chest. The beam flickered, revealing a narrow corridor that stretched into a black void. I felt the weight of that void pressing on my mind. Memories of Warren's words fraying at my confidence. It's never over. We edged forward, hands brushing damp walls. Silence so thick it felt like solid matter. My boots disturbed scuttling insects, and I heard the faint rustle of something moving ahead. Too light to be Mercer or me. Too deliberate to be random. I steadied my breathing, focusing on the hiss of the beam against the concrete. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a low cavern, just big enough for two people. My flashlight revealed crates stacked 3 high against one wall, oscillating shadows dancing across their faces. In the center stood a table strewn with photos, crime scene snapshots, aerial views of Ridgewood, close-ups of alarm keypads, and on one end, a live CB radio perched on a wooden stool. Its red on-air light glowed in the gloom, and a single line of tape hung from the desk edge, fluttering as though it had just been disturbed. I stepped forward, heart hammering, and knelt beside the desk. The voice crackled from the speaker. "Unit, Warren, can you read me? Warren, respond." The distorted transmission sounded as though recorded in segments and looped. Warren summoning someone, but the tail cut off before any reply. I pressed my ear close to the speaker, head buzzing, and then Mercer's voice whispered in my ear, "He's using the radio to lure us." I spun, weapon raised, flashlight beam tearing across the cavern. No one stood in the corners. Yet, the beam finally settled on a narrow alcove behind the desk where a dark, hulled sedan bumper lay propped against the wall. Fresh grease on its surface and scratch marks on the floor. That bumper didn't belong here. It was too new, too clean. I recognized it immediately as a part of the black SUV described in the hit-and-run call. My pulse spiked. Warren had been here, repairing, refitting, rehearsing the next stage of whatever he planned. Mercer moved beside me, voice tight. "Radio's a trap. He wants us to think backup is on the way." He reached for a folder on the desk, flipping through folders labeled victims, suspects, and, my stomach dropped, targets. Inside the last folder were photos of me. Profile shots from my academy days, training evaluations, pictures taken on patrol, all annotated with times and dates. His gaze met mine. He's been studying us. A low, grinding noise rose from the tunnel behind us. We both whipped around, flashlights converging on the narrow passage we'd come through. The tunnel wall itself seemed to tremble as the hidden maintenance grate began retracting, gears whirring from the other side. The exit was reopening. Someone was coming down, but it wouldn't be help. I stepped back toward the table, scanning for any path deeper into the complex. A dark shaft, half concealed behind stacked pipes, caught my eye. A ladder fixed to the wall, rungs disappearing upward into an iron door set flush with the ceiling. It would lead back to the surface, maybe a service hatch or basement access. It was narrow, risky, but our only chance. "Mercer," I hissed. "Up there." I pointed. He nodded, dropping the folder and raising his weapon as I edged toward the ladder. My boot heel hit something solid on the floor, a small steel device with a keypad and blinking LEDs. I recognized it from the notes, Pierce's pulse lock bypass. It looked intact, ready for use. I plucked it up, heart racing, and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Above us, the grate finished sliding open with a final clang. Faint light spilled into the cavern. Streetlight, emergency exit glow. I couldn't be sure. I grabbed the ladder, metal cold against my palms, and began to climb. Mercer scrambled behind me, and I felt a shift. The weight of him pressing into my back, a silent promise not to let go. Halfway up, the grate slammed shut outside with a reverberation that shook the cavern. Dust rained down, and I looked over my shoulder to see Mercer's flashlight beam cutting through the settling particles. Then the growl of footsteps on concrete echoed from the maintenance tunnel. Heavy boots, distinct and slow. They weren't calling out, they were hunting. I climbed faster. The ladder shuddered under our combined weight. My shoulders scraped the ceiling. My hand brushed the iron door handle above. I kicked my leg upward, tried to find purchase on one of the upper rungs. The LED from the bypass device blinked in my pocket as though urging me on. A shout came from below, Mercer's voice. "Go, I'll cover you." I didn't hesitate. I lurched upward, found the handle, yanked it open. A shaft of cool night air hit me and I hauled myself through the hatch. Rain pelted my face as I tumbled into a narrow, fenced courtyard behind an old workshop. I lay there a moment, gasping for breath, the pulse lock device cold in my hand. Above me, the hatch clanged shut. I rolled to my feet and peered over the low wall. An alley lined with dumpsters and service doors. The street beyond empty except for the distant glow of street lamps. I dusted rain from my uniform and placed the device against the hatch, pressing buttons until it whined in confirmation. A soft click behind me made my blood freeze. I whirled, shadowed figure blocking the moonlight, boots slick with rain, badge glinting faintly. "Going somewhere?" Warren's voice was low, amused, as he strolled from the shadows. The pulse lock device slipped from my hand, clattering on the concrete. He crouched and picked it up, eyes flicking to the steel keypad. "You almost had it," he said, "but shortcuts never work." His grin was all teeth in the pale light. My heart pounded. I backed away, hand tightening on my weapon. "This ends tonight," I said. Mercer's shout came from behind the hatch, muffled, strained. I spun. The hatch was locked once more. Only Warren and me, the rain, and the charged night between us. I lifted my flashlight and directed its beam on him. His face was half hidden in shadow, but the eyes were unmistakable, cold, certain, unafraid. He tilted his head, rain dripping from his collar. "No," he whispered. "This is when it really begins." And in that moment, as thunder rumbled far off, I knew the game had changed, and the one holding all the cards was the man who should never have had the power to deal them. I hit the concrete slab and rolled to my feet, rain sluicing off my jacket as I spun toward Mercer's frantic shout above me. He pounded on the iron hatch. His gloved hands rattled the metal, echoing against the brick walls. "Open up! It's me, Mercer!" he bellowed, voice raw. I pressed my ear to the steel, heart racing, as his footsteps retreated down the ladder. The grate above was locked solid, the pulse lock device in Warren's hand the only key, and now in the enemy's grip. Warren stood a dozen paces away, rainwater dripping from his cap brim, hands tucked into the pockets of his uniform jacket. His uniform was soaked, dark fabric clung to his frame. Yet he looked pristine compared to the dread pooling in my gut. "You should have used it differently," he said, turning the bypass keypad in his hand like a prize. "This device could set me free anywhere in the network, but you wasted it on a hatch." He smiled, a practiced tilt that didn't reach his eyes. "Clever, though." I leveled my flashlight at him, black SUV bumper parts scattered behind me. Mercer's desperate breaths muffled through the steel. "Let him out," I said, voice low and controlled despite the storm of fear. "Walk away, Warren. No more games." His head rocked side to side, rain tracing rivulets down his cheeks. "Games?" He chuckled, step by deliberate step closing the distance. "This isn't a game, officer, it's reality." He tapped the keypad with a finger. "You've been living in your little world of routine checks and paperwork. I showed you what lurks beneath. I even gave you the script for your next part." He held up a crumpled piece of the original Ridgewood break-in flyers. The same powder blue paper, curling at the edges, now annotated in his scratchy handwriting. Times, approaches, codes. As he spoke, the wind picked up, whipping rain into my face. Thunder grumbled overhead. My flashlight beam jittered, and for a split second I thought I saw movement behind him. A shadow detached from the darkness, slinking along the brick wall. I flicked the beam, but there was nothing. Warren's grin widened. "You see? You're already looking for ghosts." My finger nudged the trigger. "Back away," I warned. "This ends tonight." He cocked his head. Talk about endings. He tapped his temple and nodded toward the hatch. "Did you think locking Mercer below would keep your secrets safe? Do you really think he'll let you walk out with those notebooks?" He gestured behind me at the scattered crates and the notebooks still on the ground. "Those notes are explosive. Proof of my infiltration, my strategy, my brilliance." He tapped the brim of his cap. "Or I could just torch them all and tell the world a manic murderer wiped out the evidence." I swallowed hard. The notebooks, years of investigations, my own field notes, Mercer's files, laid there vulnerable. I swallowed again. "You'd burn your own story." He shrugged. "A good story deserves a dramatic finale." Lightning flared, illuminating the courtyard in stark white. I saw then the full scale of his plan. The courtyard was a crucible. Fenced walls high enough to trap us. Only one exit and one elevator hatch, both controlled by him. The workshop wall to my right had a service door I hadn't noticed, but it was chained and lock-wired from this side. His entire scheme hinged on isolating us, my partner and me, so that he could vanish into the night untroubled. I edged sideways, weapon trained on him. "You underestimated us," I said, voice hoarse. "You think you're alone in this? You think we won't find a way to talk to dispatch to pry that hatch open? We'll report the GPS ping on your cruiser. The VIN's already in the system." He laughed, head thrown back. The sound cracked on the rain. "You really believe that bureaucracy can save you?" He took a slow step closer, and I retreated until my back hit the chain-link fence. My boots slid on the wet ground. He stopped just short of arm's length, so close I could see the fine lines around his eyes. The flecks of grime lodged in the creases of his uniform. Behind his shoulder, I thought I saw the fringe of Mercer's sleeve sliding beneath the bottom of the hatch. He was digging at the locking bar, desperate to free himself. Mercer's muffled grunt told me he hadn't given up. I darted my eyes between Warren's deadlocked posture and the hatch, adrenaline surging. Warren sighed slowly, like a man disappointed by unfolding reality. I wondered how long it would take you to realize I'd planned every contingency. He withdrew a slim remote from his pocket. "This," he said, pressing a button, "is the final touch." A tremor raced beneath my feet. The service door's chain rattled on the far wall. A shrill beep sounded from the hatch. Mercer's attempts had triggered the chamber's emergency lock system, sealing us in for good. The chain on the service door popped taut, then a solitary click as a failsafe bolt slid home. My jaw went dry. Warren's remote lit up green. "We're together in here now," he said with soft finality. "It means you get to watch me walk away." He patted his chest where the bypass device still clutched. "And you can stay below, reading your little books, tracing the footprints in the dust, thinking you've solved it." The rain intensified into a roar that drowned out my heartbeat. I swallowed again. "You'll kill me before I see you escape." He shrugged, conceding with indifference. "Sure," he said. He raised the remote again. I flicked my flashlight beam at his hand, a tremor in my grip, and lunged, hoping to jar the device loose. He sidestepped fluidly, grasped my wrist with unnatural strength and twisted it until I gasped. The remote clattered to the concrete. Warren bent to retrieve it, smiled down at me. "Good attempt," he murmured. I shook my head, wrenching free. In that instant, I saw the hatch by my feet, its edges smeared with Mercer's blood where he'd cut himself trying to free it. I wrenched the hatch handle, but it was locked. I rammed my shoulder against the chain-link fence. It held fast. Warren straightened and vaulted the low wall with inhuman grace, landing on the other side in one leap. He didn't look back. He surveyed the courtyard as though it were his kingdom. Then he moved toward the alley, stealthy, deliberate, disappearing into the downpour. The courtyard was suddenly vast, empty and silent but for the rain. Mercer's faint cursing came through the hatch. I turned and dropped to one knee, pressing both hands against the metal. "Mercer," I rasped, "hold on." The hatch rattled beneath my arms. Then, through the metal, I felt a vibration, a prisoner's signal. Mercer had found the manual release, a pin above the hinge he could reach if he tilted the hatch enough. My breath caught with hope. I shoved, and the hatch inched upward, scraping against the concrete. At last, a sliver of lightning white night cut into the chamber. I heard Mercer's voice so close now. "Give me your boot, now!" I threw down my radio, reached for my boot, and passed it through the opening. Mercer hooked the heel on the release latch, yanked, and the hatch groaned open enough for him to slip out, rain drenching him in relief. I grabbed his arm and heaved him free, bracing myself as he fell onto the courtyard floor. We lay there side by side in the cold downpour, gasping, soaked, beaten. The rain washed the blood from our skin, blending it into the concrete, erasing the evidence in the fleeting glow of lightning. I crawled to the fallen bypass device, fishing it from the puddle. The keypad was cracked, circuitry exposed. Its LEDs flickered weakly, then died. Mercer crawled over beside me, voice thin. "We can't chase him in this storm," he said, teeth chattering. I pressed the ruined device to my chest, rain sluicing over it. "No," I whispered. "He planned for every possibility, except that we'd still be breathing." Mercer stared at me through the rain. "We'll get him," he promised, voice tight with determination. "But not tonight." I nodded, shoulders sagging. The storm raged overhead. Sirens in the distance sounded faint. Backup finally arriving, no doubt scanning for our GPS pings. I looked around the fenced courtyard, at the service door chained from within, the hatch now closed above. A soft rumble of thunder punctuated the moment, and I saw in the flickering lightning the shape of Warren's footsteps fading into the alley. I closed my eyes, breath shaky and cold, every muscle trembling with exhaustion and rage. The storm's howl became the only truth in the world at that moment. And in the darkness, as raindrops plastered us to the ground, I realized that Warren had given us the night, the notebooks, the proof, and the darkness in return. Because in his meticulous design, he'd made certain of one thing. Even if we survived, the doubt would never wash away.